We're going to begin our meeting shortly. If everyone could please take their seats. Good evening, everyone. We will call the March 17, 2014 City Council meeting to order. It is 6:30 p.m. First order of business is roll call and determination of the quorum. Charlene.
Estes. Peterson. Lewis. Doyle. Wright. Scott. Nordstrom. Roberts. Clayton. Lorente. We have quorum.
Thank you. And now for our invocation, we will recognize Roy Roberts of the Outreach Church and from Love, Inc. You're welcome to participate, but not required.
Let's bow our heads in the word of prayer. Father, we just thank you so much that we can seek you, Father, for wisdom and guidance. And Father, I pray for every person on the council, Father, and our mayor, Father, that you would guide them and direct them, Father, in the decisions that they need to make tonight. And Father, we just pray that all that takes place here tonight will bring honor and glory to your name. We ask these things in your precious name, Jesus. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. We will now proceed with the adoption of the agenda. Are there any additions or changes to tonight's agenda? I would like everyone to note the clarification of the wording for item number 39. It does not need to be pulled from consent if we just clarify the wording now, unless someone wants to pull it. Between the words Black Hills Gold Jewelry, Inc. and for property, it needs to say for a petition for voluntary annexation. Again, inserting the words for a petition for voluntary annexation in item number 39. We have any other? Also, item number 60. Want to clarify the wording of that. Item number 60 will say resolution number 2014-35, a resolution authorizing an application for financial assistance, authorizing the execution and submittal of the application, and designating an unauthorized representative for the East Rapid City Water System Expansion Project, project number 13-2107, CIP project number 50964. So just want to note the clarification on item number 60. Are there any additions or changes to tonight's agenda other than that? Seeing none, do we have a motion to approve with the changes noted? Second. We have a motion by Nordstrom and a second by Laurenti. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We are now on to our awards and recognitions. And is Rodney Parks here tonight? Rodney, if you've come down front along with our Ward 1 council members. In partnership with the Veterans Coordination Commission, we are pleased to present the March 2014 Veteran of the Month recognition to Rodney Parks.
Rodney Parks was born in Pierre, South Dakota, and raised on a farm near Blunt. When the Vietnam War started, he enlisted in 1968 in the U.S. Army to defend his country and reported for training in the Nike Hercules field, which was a solid fuel-propelled two-stage surface-to-air missile used by the U.S. and NATO armed forces for medium and high-altitude long-range air defense. Rodney remembers that it was April 1st and jokes that it was truly an April Fool's Day. In 1969, he re-enlisted into the medical equipment field and trained in Denver. It was during this time that he met and married his sweetheart, Christine. Rodney served in Alaska until 1972 with the rank of Specialist E5. This is where he and Christine started their family, and together they had 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls, prior to moving to Rapid City in 1980. He and Christine lived a fulfilling life together until Christine was diagnosed with cancer and passed in 2009.
Thank you. Today, Rodney feels he can give back to his community by serving other veterans. One of his favorite things is his membership and activity with the Disabled American Veterans and Auxiliary. He volunteers at Fort Meade as the Deputy VAVS representative, providing personal items for resident veterans. He held the office of Junior Vice Commander and is currently serving as Senior Vice Commander. In the past, he has held the office of State Second Junior Vice Commander. Rodney is a DAV service officer who helps veterans who frequent the DAV and who need information about their benefits. Rodney volunteers at the DAV Hall 20 hours a week, assisting his fellow veterans. Additionally, he retired from public health service after more than 20 years in the industry. Rodney Parks is a true patriot of his country. He is most deserving of Veteran of the Month, and we thank you for your service in the U.S. Army. To your family and fellow veterans, we are thankful to have you as part of our community.
Thank you to the Veterans Club and to the City Council for selecting me. Thank you.
I'll now recognize Eric Hikas from our Sustainability Committee, who has an award to present.
Thank you, Mayor. This one is a very special award I'm presenting this evening. It's the culmination of about 3 to 4 years of work on the behalf, a part of Rapid City. Lon Van Duzen and Mike Stanley are here. They're lucky recipients, but I'm going to bestow you with a little extra energy on this one because it's very, very significant to the city of Rapid City. The Green Cities Task Force, which was formed about 4 years ago by the former mayor, challenged our community with putting its leadership toward being stewards of resources, energy, and money. As much as anything, sustainability is a huge buzzword for all of us. But those of us who really feel special about doing and living sustainably know that it's a three-pronged effort, and it involves all of us as citizens, and not just lead credits, for example. But all that said, this is probably one of the last steps that the Green Cities Task Force has been charged with, has been accomplished. We've done great things like the Downtown Recycles program, forming a committee, creating an award system for sustainability, and so on. We've got about 2 left. One of them happens to be local foods. But this one is about saving lots and lots of a precious resource in the community, water, through the use of smart technology. This particular and specific project is the Rapid City Central Irrigation Control, and it is something that the Parks Department has done with the help of Mike Stanley. I have a very long speech prepared regarding this. Actually, I don't. It's very simple. What they've done is they've developed known technology and incorporated it in our community to control the use of water through irrigation, through central control, and they've had 4 parks added to their central control system. It's a great step. 5 parks. Memorial, Roosevelt, Founders, Sioux, and Canyon Lake Park are now part of a central control system that monitors the use of water and saves water. The new system is a Toro system, right, Lon? Alex, right? And so instead of if there's a leak or it's raining and the system is on, those kind of things, the Parks Department now has technology to be able to sense and monitor those things from their local offices rather than sending crews out there, saving us as citizens dollars. We like that. But also saving millions of gallons of water, and I'm very accurate in saying that. This will save Rapid City millions of gallons of water and tens of thousands of dollars. Payback for this system is 2 years in being very optimistic, being a little bit less optimistic, 3 to 4 years, and that's great. So huge kudos to the Parks Department and their consultant, 42nd Street Design. And I'm sorry I got a little bit excited here, but so anyway. Mayor?
Well, we're excited too, and this has been a team effort, and I'd like to now recognize someone who's been with the city, I think, just about as long as I've been alive. And we really appreciate, Lon Van Duzen's service to our community. Lon, would you like to say a few words?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Eric, and I express my appreciation to the Sustainability Committee for presenting this award to us. This is a lot like a Academy Award ceremony. I'm kind of the messenger. There's a lot of people that put a lot of work in behind this system to receive this. And I have to say humbly that I was probably the biggest skeptic of this system to begin with, but I've certainly changed my mind. But I want to tell you and the council too, this is not magic. It still takes good people to manage, maintain, and monitor it. So I want to thank our staff for the hard work that they put into making this system work. It takes people to do that. And thank Mike Stanley for your assistance on it too. So that's all I wanted to say. Mike, would you like to say anything?
Echoing what Lon said, a lot of it, the reason the system's working is you guys have one fantastic Parks and Recreation department. Not only Parks and Recreation, but we worked with the IT department. Public Works was a major contributor to this, so this really bridged a lot of different departments within the city, and everyone worked together very well. And this is just the first step in a long road, and I'm excited to be a part of it. And I miss the red carpet walking in, so.
Special thanks to Jerry Wright. I think I put the bug in Jerry's ear about 4 years ago that this needs to happen, and he saw it to daylight. So, Jerry, thank you. Special.
May I say something? Sure. Thank you. I agree with Lonnie. It takes manpower. I watched Star Trek the other night. I lost all faith in robots. Thank you.
Thank you again, everyone. Now is the time for members of the public to discuss or express concerns to the council on any issue not on the agenda. Action will not be taken at the meeting on any issue not on the agenda, except by placement on the agenda by unanimous vote of the council members present. And we'll first go to Bernadette Wilgers, who would like to talk about hens in the city limits. Bernadette, if you'd come over to my right there. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. I obviously have not done this before, but I live off of North Haines, and I just wanted to express my support for having hens in the city limits. I am not aware of all the different objections, but I just wonder if perhaps some of the objections are not to chickens themselves, but to poor ownership practices. And I believe that any animal, if it's not properly cared for, will be a problem. But what I don't understand is I have several times seen in the city yards where they have these great big dogs who stand out there and bark all day long, make a mess, they stink, they have the potential to bite. You know, if that's okay, why can't we have hens? I mean, I have dogs too, but I take care of them. And I've talked to my neighbors and I've said, you know, hey, if they're outside and they're barking or they're creating a problem, come talk to me if I don't address it right away, because I need to know these things. And I think if people were responsible and they're good neighbors, then we could alleviate some of the concerns that people have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we'll now recognize Patricia Scarborough, also who would like to speak on hen keeping.
Hi, my name's Patricia. We recently moved to South Dakota. I live in Ward 3. And I'm also here in support of the hen issue. I've been watching this because we previously had hens where we lived and found it very rewarding. We enjoyed the eggs, of course, but together with our garden, the chickens provided a high-quality food source that we were unable to get locally. South Dakota is an agricultural state, and I was pleasantly surprised by the local food culture here in Rapid City. However, even locally raised chickens are hard to find. I've noticed a sign at Safeway recently that, that they apologize that they can't keep up with the demand for free-range or organic or cage-free eggs. And I often shop at Dee's Market. She can't keep up with the demand, so I just feel like this would be something that if people want to, they should have the right. The local food movement is growing rapidly, even here in Rapid City, because people are realizing that it's often healthier for our diets, for our economies, for our international relations, many reasons. But I would like to think that Rapid City is open-minded, more forward-thinking than other parts of the state. So I was very surprised to learn that they don't allow hens when we moved here. My husband he grew up on a ranch in western South Dakota, so we've spent many years visiting. I absolutely feel that people are allowed to have their objections to ordinances like this, that they're allowed. Not everyone will be in support of keeping hens, or not everyone will want to keep them themselves. But I believe that the way the ordinance is written and existing ordinances already in place address the concerns of those opposing it. We're allowed to keep dogs, various other creatures as pets, as another woman mentioned, yet it does not mean we're allowed to let them be a nuisance. It doesn't mean we can let our yards get filthy with their waste. It doesn't mean we can keep as many as we want. If our neighbor doesn't like our dog, we still have a right to keep our pet. I believe the same should go for chickens, whether we think of them as pets, as many hen owners do, or simply as a form of small-scale farming, as I do. So, from the impressions I've gained about South Dakota from many years visiting, most people here share my belief that it should be our freedom to do as we wish within certain bounds. And I believe this ordinance set forth those bounds while still allowing those of us that want to keep a harmless animal, a useful animal, to do so. So thank you for listening.
Thank you, Patricia, and we'll come back to you later when it comes to item 29 for your other speaker request item. Have I missed anyone on general public comment? Do not have any additional speaker request forms for general public comment? Public comment is now closed. We are now on items 3 through 44. Public comment is open now on items 3 through 44. And we will start with Fred Thurston on item number 29. For those watching, item 29 is regarding matching funding for South Dakota DOT Transportation Alternatives Program project for the connection to Western Dakota Tech. Good evening.
Good evening, Council and Mayor. Thank you for letting me talk. I really hope that one of you will stand up and pull 29 from the consent calendar, because it's basically rejecting a grant that has been offered to the city. I sit on the YMCA Health Impact Assessment Committee, which focuses on pedestrians and bicycles. We strongly support the master plan that was done for bicycling, and this portion of the extension of the bicycle safety system is one of the highest of the priorities. It is a good system. The advantages in bicycle safety, which this will provide, as well as the pedestrian access to the VOTEC, is innumerable. It's a good program. Grant you, it may not be as much money as we want, but did we commit to bicycle and pedestrian safety or not? You know, they're offering and providing, I think, 35%, if I'm not mistaken, grant for this. We can come up with the other money. I don't know how. I don't know exactly where it's going to come from. But it's like when we talked to people about restoring the McGillicuddy house, and people took a look at it and said, how in the world will you ever be able to restore that house? Well, as you can now see, we've raised over $250,000, and the project is well underway to be restored. If we can do that for the McGillicuddy house, I think we can do that for the safety and the importance of a good bike and pedestrian bikeway on the east side of town. Thank you.
Thank you, Fred. We'll now go to Eric Heikus on item 29.
Eric Heikus, 1115 West Boulevard, citizen of Rapid City. No formal representation other than my own in saying this. Denying these funds is a bad decision. I don't recommend it. I'm with my former colleague Fred Thurston. We haven't rehearsed this whatsoever, but for a lot of reasons, this is an opportunity to connect alternative transportation to higher education. Those are canons in planning. You only have two other similar facilities in the community that have higher ed with needs to link to bike and ped path. To do this is shooting yourself in the foot. You've built a sea of parking out there as a result. You're encouraging single occupancy use of students. You're creating a glut on Omaha and compounding traffic issues at the intersection there. We planned initially once, and this is me lecturing here, but for alternative transportation and a bus stop there, and we even built facilities for a bus stop, and actually they took that route away, so now students can't even take the bus out there. So, man, you're killing us here. So let's reconsider this.
Thank you, Eric. We'll now go to Shelley Halterman, also on item 29. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. My name is Shelley Halterman. I'm a citizen of Rapid City, and I live in Ward 5. A few weeks ago, I heard the police chief say something that has really stuck to me about thinking big. And it stuck. I just think that thinking big for our community is the way to go. And recently, the Rapid City new slogan that the CVB has come up with is "Do big things." So I really think this falls into the doing big things for our community. The project that we're speaking about is part of the master plan that the council adopted in 2011. We've already heard from Fred, so what I would like to say, or to request the council, is to provide a 2-year funding arrangement. Since the budget has already, for the money this year, it can't handle all of it, but if we did a 2-year arrangement, we could do half the money for 2014, the other half in 2015. And the South Dakota Department of Transportation is looking at the project for 2015 anyway. They're not recognizing it until then. So perhaps maybe that would be a way that we could solve the money problems, is to put it over a course of 2 years, 2014, 2015. I also agree that getting the bike path out to the Western Dakota area, there are so many people in that area that can't ride their bike or use sidewalks or walk because there isn't anything available. There isn't even a bus route that they can get. So they're going to have to use a car to come in. I think in thinking big and doing big things, being green and becoming very urban, and understanding that we need the bike path to and from one side of our city to the other. So thank you for listening to me. Have a nice evening.
Thank you, Shelley. We'll now go to Natalie Newman, also on item 29. The next step after Natalie will be Patricia Scarborough again.
Good evening. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak with you. Obviously, I am referring to the item that we're talking about with the bike path, and I kind of wanted to put a face on a person who is a cycle commuter. I gave up my car after college, and that was many, many years ago, decades ago. You don't want to know how long ago. But I teach, and a lot of people are cycle commuters. It's not just a thing limited to bigger cities like Minneapolis, St. Paul. So I'm the face of that, and I actually have a student here tonight who's also a cycle commuter and has made that as a choice too. So we need ways to get to schools and across town and to get there safely, because there's a lot of places in Rapid City that are just absolutely not places that you can ride a bike safely, let alone walk. So I just wanted to put a face on that, and thank you for letting me come up here and say that.
Thank you. And we'll now go to Patricia Scarborough on item 29.
Hi. I just am learning about this denied funding, and I just wanted to also step up and say I'm an avid biker and I'm fully support Bike Path. I just wanted to, express more support for that. Just recently, my husband was talking about a potential job on the east side of town, and was thinking, man, it'd be nice if I could bike there, but man, there's no easy way to get there by bike. And we just new to town, but I see all the development that way, and I just see the value. I just have a hard time finding any negatives of something like that will give a dedicated space, that minimizes interaction between cars and bikes, which obviously, I can understand why cars have problems sometimes with bikes and vice versa, and it just seems like a slam dunk and a no-brainer. So please support it if you can. Thank you.
Thank you. I do not have any additional speaker request forms on items 3 through 44. Have I missed anyone? I recognize Dennis Halterman. Come on up.
There was out of sheets here, so there's no speaker request.
Okay.
So sorry about that.
Thank you.
I just got to thinking as everyone was talking. I mean, pragmatically, it's a very good idea to have a bike path, obviously, but we've been a lot of discussion recently about kind of the momentum we have going in Rapid City right now and the brand we're creating for Rapid City. And, we're trying to build a city for what a city is going to be like in 10 or 20 years, not what a city is right at the moment. And as we can see with Royal here, he bikes. He rides his bikes everywhere. And I think we're seeing that a lot with the younger generation as they're moving away from automobiles. So as we put together a community that is relevant to the people that are going to be sitting up there and running our community in the next generation, they're going to be looking for things like bike packs and mobility. And it's not going to be a recreational thing, it's going to be actual transportation. So I understand with this particular item, there are some financial concerns, but I would urge the council to figure out a way to make those financial concerns work out so that we can begin to build the community that is going to have the brand as sustainable and progressive and forward-thinking and recognizes that we are moving away from automobile transportation daily into things like bicycle and other ways. So if there's any way whatsoever that we can figure out how to make this work, I think it would be fantastic for our community and the brand we're building for ourselves. So thank you very much, and I'm sorry I didn't have that. Thank you for seeing me, Mayor.
Thank you, Dennis. And I apologize that we're out of speaker request forms tonight, so if you'd like to speak and you don't already have a form filled out, raise your hand and come up and identify yourself, and you can speak on that particular item. Okay. We're still on items 3 through 44, so come on up, sir, and state your name for the record and which item you're speaking on.
Royal Jusula, also for item 29. As has been mentioned, I'm an avid bicycle commuter. I do own a car. Right now it doesn't run because I never feel any need to drive it. I ride a bike absolutely everywhere. I don't really have much reason to ride over towards Western Dakota Tech and on the east side. However, the times that I have ridden over there, it is an absolute mess. Having dedicated bicycle infrastructure in that area of town would be great for anybody who needs to be on that side of town and would rather ride a bike or doesn't have access to any other form of transportation that is non-human powered. Also, I believe that bicycle infrastructure in general is good for any city. It supports local business, it supports fitness, and it reduces traffic congestion with single occupancy vehicles. Thank you.
Thank you, Royal. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on items 3 through 44? Last call, 3 through 44. Public comment is now closed on items 3 through 44. We are now on consent items 3 through 44. If any council members or staff would like to pull an item for separate consideration, please hit your lights. We are going to pull 24. 24 will be pulled. We'll go to Chad Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Number 20, please.
Okay, so we have 20 and 24 so far. Richie Nordstrom.
Thank you, Mayor. Item 29.
Okay, 20, 24, and 29. Jerry Wright.
22.
22. Amanda Scott.
Thank you, Mayor. There's a couple I'd like to pull, and the ones listed so far are not them. So I'd like to pull items number 15, 23, 26, 34, 37, 39, and 43, please.
We got 15, 20, 22, 23, 24, 26, 29, 34, 37, and 43. and 39.
Did you go say after 26?
15, 20, 22, 23, 24, 26, 29, 34, 37, 39, and 43. Did we miss any items?
Mayor, are we going to start offering pillows and blankets for the public?
Do we have a motion to approve consent with the exception of the items noted?
So moved.
Motion by Laurenti, second by Lewis, to approve items 3 through 44 with the exception of 15, 20, 22, 23, 24, 26, 29, 34, 37, 39, and 43. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We are on item number 15. This is Public Works. We'll go to our Public Works Chairman, Richie Nordstrom. Richie. Not wearing green tonight, Richie.
I was going to bring out my green pen
right.
or green backpack. Item 15, Mayor?
Yes.
Item 15 is to authorize the mayor and finance officer to sign covenant agreement between the City of Rapid City and DOEC LLC regarding ownership and maintenance of a stormwater detention pond located at the Brookfield subdivision. And I move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion by Nordstrom and a second by Scott, and we'll go to Alderwoman Amanda Scott. Amanda.
Thank you, Mayor. May I ask Mr. Wolsterstorff a question or two, please?
You may.
Hi, Terry. Just for clarification, when reading this actually leaves the ownership of this stormwater detention pond with the developers of the subdivision. Is that correct?
That's correct. Technically, ultimately with the property owners in that development.
Okay, so ultimately it will be with all the property owners that own a lot within the subdivision.
Correct.
And they will have to maintain it, the city resources with that drainage utility fund that will be starting up in 2015 will not contribute to the cleaning of this, or will it?
I think those are some policy issues that will be forthcoming here as we work some of the details out with our stormwater utility. I would anticipate that some of the major maintenance work, the dredging out of the ponds once they fill in, would probably be done under the stormwater utility maintenance work. But the general weekly maintenance or monthly maintenance of mowing the weeds, general maintenance would fall on the homeowners out there.
So this pond will be added to the other list of the city's ponds to be put into that dredging rotation. And so the drainage utility fee that everyone within the corporate limits of the city who owns property will help contribute to keeping this pond cleaned up.
I guess I don't want to guarantee that yet at this point until all of those final policies are brought forward and agreed upon by the council.
All right, thank you, Terry. I'm just looking for clarification on what qualifies and what the city will be taking over for maintenance. Thank you. I yield the floor.
Floor has been yielded. Any other comments on item 15? The motion is to approve. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We're now on item number 20. Richie.
Thank you, Mayor. Item 20 is to authorize the mayor and finance officer to sign a golf course food and beverage concession agreement with Platinum Restaurant Group, also known as Marco's Pizza, and I can even make a motion to support this, Mayor.
We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second? And a second by Laurenti. Any discussion? Seeing none? All in favor? I'm sorry, Chad Lewis.
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I'd known we were going to pull half the agenda, I wouldn't have pulled this one. But I hadn't had a chance to publicly comment on this one yet because I'd missed a meeting. But I just want to wholeheartedly offer my support to Mr. Holdenhausen and his group. I've gotten to know him a little bit this year. Our children are on the same ski team together. He's the kind of guy that goes out of the way to step up to the plate and take care of people that have had problems with medical problems. He's carried their kids around and definitely gone out of his way for that for personal reasons. So I imagine his business to be just as well or better. So I definitely support him for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chad. Any further discussion on item number 20? Motion is to approve. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. I have been informed, by the way, we have more speaker request forms, so there's a new supply over there. We're now on item number 22. Richie.
Thank you, Mayor. Item 22 is to deny the request by Lazy P 6 Land Company Incorporated for a holding tank for Unit 11 and undivided interest in the common area in Southgate commercial condos, generally located south and east of 5th Street and Catron Boulevard intersection. And I will move to uphold the denial.
Second. We have a motion by Nordstrom and a second by Roberts to uphold the denial. And we'll go to Alderman Jerry Wright. Jerry.
Thank you, Mayor. The owner asked that this be postponed for 2 weeks. I'm just going to ask, would you amend your motion to delay this for 2 weeks, Richie?
I'll take that as a friendly amendment.
Well, that would be a substitute motion. So we have no other lights, so
if I may explain just a little bit, I'm not comfortable with the direction that this is headed.
So
we would be better suited if we do that as a separate amendment.
There are no additional lights waiting to speak, so you can offer a substitute motion if you'd like to continue.
I'll make that motion.
Okay. We have a motion by Wright and a second by Lewis to continue this item to the next council meeting or to Public Works?
Public Works.
To the next Public Works meeting. Okay. We'll go to Alderwoman Charity Doyle.
If Mr. Jerry Wright would be so kind as to explain the reason for the continuation, I would appreciate that.
Mr. Wright.
I know we received a packet involving discussion between attorneys, and would like to have a chance to absorb that, give them a chance to conduct their discussion, and 2 weeks is not going to hurt us either way. That's all.
Charity.
Thank you, Mayor. My understanding is that the attorney's office has had time to digest the packet. Is that something you would be willing to clear up this evening, Joel?
We'll go to our city attorney, Joel Landine.
Sure. I did find out this morning that the packet that the attorney for Lazy P6 submitted to the council was more detailed than the information he had submitted to my office. But I have had a chance to review it. You know, what it's really going to come down to his reliance on that Belfouche case is it is not applicable to this situation because one, that statute he cites is not applicable to Rapid City as a first-class municipality. The second thing, the reason that the Supreme Court in that case ruled that Belfouche could not require annexation as a condition of providing services is because the language in the statute said the city shall provide or that you shall hook up, and the court found that that was a requirement on behalf of both the city and the homeowner to hook up to the city system. So there was no conditions that you could place on it. You had to require them to hook up. The very next legislative session, the legislature went back and amended it to say you could not require a city to hook somebody up to city services that was outside the city limits. So they changed that holding. So I don't think that case has any application. I'm very clear on that. The next question then is, can you require connection to the city sewer? And based on, and I think this is where we're probably just going to have to agree to disagree with Mr. Davis and his attorney, is that under state law, under the county septic ordinance, under the city ordinances, if you're within 400 feet of the sewer, you are supposed to connect. Well, the question is, and in his letter, he says the closest connection to the sewer is at the corner of 5th and Catron Boulevard. What he leaves out of his letter is that Mr. Davis has constructed a sewer that runs within probably 30 feet of this building. And so he's clearly within the 400 feet. However, he has withheld having it inspected and accepted. It's Public Works understanding that the sewer is ready. It's just all that's left is for them to inspect it, and it will be accepted, and then it's ready to go. Well, he is not having that sewer inspected to keep it out of the 400 feet. So the question is, does that sewer sitting there put him within the 400 feet? The other question and the other issue they raised is the annexation of the entire property when there are now condominium owners within it, I believe one other owner at this point, who might not necessarily agree with the annexation. And my response to that is a problem that was created by the way that he divided up this property. He can't have it both ways. He created this as a condominium so he would not have to comply with the city subdivision regulations and could create a transferable interest in what now I will loosely refer to as lots, but they aren't lots. If you look at them on Rapid Map, they look like lots, but they're not. They're condominium units. As condominium units, it's my opinion, there is one parcel of land that is adjacent to the city. And that parcel has now been divided into condominium units, but as far as the legal land, there's one parcel there. And it encompasses all the condominium units. Just like if you consider it a normal condominium would be somebody buys a lot, they build a building on it, and then they sell units within that building. But instead of there being a building, there's just condominiums over the land itself. But in my opinion, there's one lot or one legal parcel of land there that now has varying degrees of interest. So the condominium unit or the condominium owners group would have to agree to annexation. It's my understanding that Mr. Davis is the primary owner of, and since he owns a majority of the lots, I'm guessing that he's the majority vote within the condominium group and could annex that if he chose to. But really, again, that is a problem he has created. But in my opinion, he's adjacent to the city. And based on the fact that there is a sewer line in front of this building, that we cannot accept a position where somebody can install a sewer and then delay its acceptance in order to finish constructing the buildings outside of the city limits where they aren't going to have any fire. There's no fire hydrants. There's no fire suppression being dealt with because the county doesn't require it. There's no landscaping. There's no paving. He's He's circumventing all of these requirements by not being in the city, which is why he doesn't want to annex this into the city until after the buildings are already constructed and there's not anything we can do about it. And I just don't believe that that is something that should be acceptable to the city council, and frankly should be told no and have to annex it in and build it to city standards when he develops those units. And I disagree with what his attorney has asserted in his letter.
Okay, so that was a really, really big answer for the overarching problem of annexation. My understanding is that this item number 22 is specifically for a holding tank. What I'm hearing is we're disinclined at any point to approve this holding tank, so I guess I'm
Correct.
wondering, is there something else that would support the delay for that? Because this is not about the annexation. This is about only the holding tank, correct?
That is correct.
So if...
But the reason we don't support the holding tank is because, again, a holding tank is when you don't have access to another way to dispose of your waste.
Right.
He has a sewer that, if he gets accepted, is 30 feet from the property and was built specifically to serve this property. So he has another way to dispose of his waste. He doesn't need the holding tank.
Okay, so then I would ask again, Mr. Wright, if you would be so kind, why the 2-week delay on that issue, not the annexation? Thank you. I yield.
What I would hope to see happen is an agreement to attach to our source system an inspection to occur and an annexation agreement. That's where I'd like to see us go if we can in the next 2 weeks.
Charity, you still have the floor.
You have the floor.
I guess I don't know why delaying the denial of the holding tank, because to me it's a different issue. If I would assume or presume that, I mean, it's developing down there. South is where a lot of things are getting built. It's going to build out. They're going to have to apply at some point for annexation. So why would we not deal with it then rather than delaying this one holding tank when a holding tank is most likely not going to get approved anyway? I'm just, instead of dragging things out, dispose of this, let a fresh agreement come back up so that it's clear cut and not convoluted like we like to make so many things. My take.
If I can continue this discussion, because that's kind of where it's gone.
All right, we'll come back to you
All right.
later, okay?
Okay.
So we'll come back to you. We'll go to Steve Laurenti.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I think I was going to ask the same question, so I appreciate Alderwoman Doyle's questions. That's exactly what I was going to ask the attorney as well. Ultimately, I would encourage my colleagues to support voting down the continuation. I think it's very clear that we need to deny the holding tank, and hopefully they can come to a different agreement at a later time. But denying it or allowing a continuation just continues the inevitable at this point. I think we've heard that from the city attorney. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Steve. And we'll go to Bonnie Peterson.
Thank you, Mayor. Though I do not support the holding tank today, and I won't support it in 2 weeks, out of professional courtesy to Alderman Wright, I will support his continuation so that he can have more time to study if he would like. Thank you.
Joel, you have your light on.
Thank you, Mayor. This talk of an annexation agreement, I just think is misplaced, because I don't see the point of having an agreement that says annex now rather than just making them annex now. There's no conditions unless you want an agreement that says go ahead and develop these units outside of the city limits and then annex after you've developed them and all these structures and properties have been developed to county standards, not city standards. There's no need for an agreement. We believe this property, he's developing it, needs to annex now so that it's developed under the city standards. And I don't see the point of doing an agreement that says annex now rather than just saying annex now. Why add that additional step in there?
We'll go to Alderman Jerry Wright.
Well, I certainly don't support a holding tank, nor do I support septic tanks, and I totally support it being connected to our sewer system, and I totally support it being annexed. So, where do we go from there? If there's a vote to deny the septic tank or the holding tank, I have no problem with that. I'd vote for that. But I think we have an issue here ongoing that I think could be resolved with some stern and realistic negotiations from our side, saying that we want you to connect and we expect you and you will connect to our sewer system, and we want you to agree to annex. Other option, can we issue a resolution for forced annexation? Is that another way we can go that way, can't we? Should we? And this is not the time for that discussion, I guess, but let's get her done. I withdraw my motion, yes.
Okay. And that's okay with the seconder?
Yes.
Okay, so the motion has been withdrawn. We are back to the motion to deny. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries and the item is denied. We are now on item number 23.
Thank you, Mayor. Item 23 is to authorize the mayor and finance officer to sign resolution 2014-037, a resolution to declare an emergency and authorize repair or replacement of certain fixtures and equipment at the city's water reclamation facility. And I wholeheartedly move to support this.
Second. We have a motion by Nordstrom and a second by Roberts, and we'll go to Amanda Scott.
Thank you, Mayor. May I ask Terry Wolsterstorff for an update on this? This was walked on at Public Works last week, and Terry had indicated that he would bring an update on the status of this, or how much progress has been able to happen to find out what happened.
Thank you. Yeah, we did finally get the pond pumped down. Actually, I was out there this morning with Dan Kuhn, one of our project engineers, and meeting with Dave Van Cleve and the rest of the staff out there. And here's what we do know. There's certainly a major failure down in the bottom of the pond. We do anticipate having to totally replace that pond liner. We do know that potentially there's some warranty money for some. The liner itself has got some UV damage, and potentially we will have some reimbursement from the manufacturer as part of the warranty on that. But we have gotten some preliminary estimates, and we are looking somewhere in that $90,000 range for replacement of the liner. We really don't have an option. It's got to be done. It's kind of day to day right now. We're putting a lot of overtime in. It's a lot of additional staff time out there to operate the system without this pond functioning. So we are currently working on some specifications. We'll try to get 2 quotes from 2 suppliers, and we'll obviously look at moving forward as quickly as we can.
Thank you, Terry. Thank you for the update as well. And I would just ask for you to keep updating us as you find out more information. Thank you. I yield the floor.
Any further discussion on item number 23? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 24, Ritchie.
Thank you, Mayor. Item 24 is to acknowledge the applicant's withdrawal for the request for exception to not construct a portion of East Minnesota Street adjacent to the proposed Phase 3 of Elks Country Estates. I move to accept the acknowledgement.
We have a motion by Nordstrom and a second by Laurenti to acknowledge the applicant's withdrawal of this request. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We are now on item number 26, and we'll go to our Legal and Finance Chairman, Chad Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item number 26 to approve the appointment of Mark Jobman for the Compass Committee. I move approval.
We have a motion by Lewis to approve and a second by Wright, and we'll go to Alderwoman Amanda Scott. Amanda.
Thank you, Mayor. Richie Nordstrom and I have the privilege of serving as members of the Compass Committee, and so on behalf of the 2 representatives of the Compass Committee, I'd like to welcome Mark, and I believe it's saying Jobman, to the Compass Committee. I did hear that a comment was made by Mr. Jobman that he potentially has some aspirations for a political career, and he thought this would be a good stepping stone. He might want to review some of the history on this. This might not have been the committee he wanted to start on, but welcome anyways. Thank you, Mayor. I yield the floor.
Any further discussion on the motion to approve? Item number 26. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We are now on item number 29. Mr. Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Number 29 is to deny matching funds for the South Dakota Department of Transportation Alternatives Program project, Mako Sika Trail and connection to Western Dakota Boat Tech. And I have a question, please, for Mr. Alec DeSmet, if it's possible. No, I'm not making a motion. I'm asking some questions. We'll get to a motion in just a second.
Typically, the floor is yielded. But go ahead.
Fine.
Okay.
I'll make
Go
a
ahead, go
motion
ahead.
to, well, no, I'm not making that. You want me to yield?
Go ahead and ask your question.
Okay. Alex, thank you very much for coming. I have a question for you. It was could you give a little bit of history on this for people, because it's been pretty confusing, and then I'll have a question for you as far as the alternative financing plans, possibly.
Sure. Community Planning and the Parks and Rec Department proposed this project to the TAP program, which is through South Dakota DOT, along with 2 other projects that were approved by City Council to go forward for that program. We presented those two, Kip Harrington and myself, to the DOT program, and they came back and offered us $207,000 towards this project and this project alone. And we originally requested $400,000 for federal match. So that was about a 80-20 match program that we were requesting. We would have to put up 20%, they would put up 80. So they came back with a lesser offer. We presented that to CIP committee to try to make up the difference and fund potentially up to 65% of that entire project. 35% would come from the DOT TAP program. They recommended that we kind of do a see who blinks first kind of thing, and because the TAP program offered lesser funds to our community and one other community, and the discussion was had to whether, you know, if we would just stick to our guns and go with the $100,000 that we had anticipated to apply to this grant, and then if they would allow that and be able to potentially receive the other funding offer that was offered to the other community. So if that other community backed out, we'd potentially have the availability of those extra funds to come to our community. However, we received verification from the committee that that would not be the case, that other group was going to receive those funds and had committed their share of the funding with the lesser amount coming from TAP. So that's why I brought it on to Legal and Finance when I did, to let you guys know that that's how that was going to go, so that by approving the $100,000 that basically we would not be eligible, or that program and that project were not going to be offered to us.
Okay, so there's been 2 questions. If we continue this item for further study, we don't have time for that, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so is there any chance we can do a funding over 2 years, or allow the $100,000 that we've already approved to go through, and then try to look for alternative sources, maybe through private or public funding? Would that be a possibility?
Yes.
Would the city be on the hook for the extra money if we went ahead and approved it without a funding source identified?
Yes, and I would believe that we'd probably want to identify a funding source.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess why I'm going with that, obviously, is I really support the project. I think it's something that we definitely need. I would urge my fellow council people to try to see if we can figure out a way to fund it over a 2-year process. I'm not sure if that's possible, but how much time do we have, by the way?
Well, not to put you on the spot, but I think tonight a decision needs to be made, because next week the TAP program is making their final determination. We're currently on the STIP that they put forward, but if we don't commit, basically they'll relinquish those funds.
So if we were to approve our $100,000, that would be considered a commitment, or would we have to prove we're committing to the whole amount, or how does it work?
Yes, 100% of the funding for the project needs to be committed by the city.
It can be done over 2 years.
Yes, till 2015.
Okay, thank you very much. I yield the floor.
Floor has been yielded. We do not have a motion. We'll go to Richie Nordstrom.
Thank you, Mayor. If it's all right with the rest of the council members, I'll make the motion to deny the matching funds, and if I can retain the floor.
Second. We have a motion to deny the matching funding and a second by Roberts. Richie, you have the floor.
For me, this one ranks right up there with putting sales tax on food. We have to do it. It's very, very unfortunate we have to do it this way to do this. And I don't like putting sales tax on food either, but we had to do it, or the city had to do that in the past. The other part of it was that, for me, this falls in the category of economic development. I believe very strongly that if the bicyclist and especially the enthusiast can help us out in some fashion, I'd be entertained. I will listen to that as an entertainment item, but it sounds like we have to get something addressed tonight. If I can address Mr. Thurston, you don't need to answer this question, but I'm also on the same committee that you are with the Health Impact Assessment Group and the YMCA. And this is one of the things we tried to do way back then when that whole thing started up. And then my project was to come up with a way we could get sidewalks throughout the city, but we haven't been able to develop a plan. So if we can come up with budgeting line items within the next, in my case, it'll be the next 2 years in 15 and 16 to actually start addressing all of these sidewalks that need to be fixed or even install new ones. And that'll have to come from us up here on the council to do that effort. But in the meantime, Alex, if I can ask you one more question, is there a possibility that we would still be eligible for a grant in the future? Say, I'll pick a year out as next year. Is it possible we could reapply for another grant?
Absolutely. Whether the grants are available at that time is a different story, but yes, there's a few alternatives that we can pursue down the road. I would like to add that if I can, since you're talking about sidewalks, currently there's no sidewalks along Campbell in that vicinity. Obviously, council has authority to put those in. That would be a potential reduction. So I mean, there are some alternatives here.
Yeah, and unfortunately, Alex, the only other method that we have at our disposal right now, the tool that's in the toolbox, is to ask or require the property owners to put that in. And so far, that hasn't been met with great enthusiasm, obviously. So we need to come up with some other incentives for sidewalks. And this is one of those plans that need to be addressed because we've been ignoring it for way too long. Thank you. I'll yield the floor.
We'll go to Alderman Brad Estes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess, I'd like to try to find the money. I was really excited about this project because this is one of the first things Charity Doyle got me involved in when I first got elected. And I, in the end game here is to end up with a bike path from Rapid along the railroad line all the way to Kadoka, as I understand it. And in my predecessor, I know that for him, getting sidewalks and getting some kind of pedestrian or bike traffic to Western Dakota VOTEC was very important for him. And so this was easy for me to sign on for it because it was a way, in a roundabout way. And I guess I got to ask, can I ask our finance officer a question if you could, Mayor?
You may.
Don't we, first, before I ask a question, we applied for this with the idea that we were going to have to put about 18 to 20% in. So this is a shock to anybody's budget. But Pauline, is there a way to get money, or who's got money? Who's got sidewalk money that we could put towards this? Come on.
One of the reasons I had asked Alex at Legal and Finance is if this could go to CIP on Friday to have the committee look at it again is because that is when we're bringing over our 2013 carryover amounts, which would be anything that was unspent in the prior year. If that money is approved, and I have not seen what the Parks and Rec Board want to do with their money, but if that money is approved, Parks and Rec is looking at $1.2 million in carryover amounts, plus $846,000 for the 2014 budget for CIP. So instead of taking all of the money out of the grant matching funds, we could continue with that $100,000 from CIP grant matching funds line item, because that's only a $200,000 line item in the CIP budget, and perhaps they can come up with the other 193,000 or whatever, the just shy of 200,000 out of their CIP dollars. I don't know if that's something that the Parks and Rec Board can find or not, but they do have money in their line item if the carryover is approved.
Well, thank you. I'm not on the CIP board. I could go this Friday, thank you. But I'm not, I can't support to deny this. I just think that there's a way we can, and Alex, there's no way we can buy time. I mean, what is the drop dead date? Today.
We said we'd have an answer to them by Tuesday, being tomorrow. I think we can look at a number of alternatives for funding this over the course of 2 years, but I think they need to see and they need to hear from this committee that we're committed to this project in order to proceed.
Well, I'm not sure. So if I understand you right, unless we come up with another funding source, the direction you're going is saying we have $100,000 towards this project and see if they blank, otherwise we're willing to walk away from it? Is that what I understand?
That's no longer implied.
Okay.
That was the initial idea.
Okay. I'll yield the floor for now, Mayor. Thanks.
The floor has been yielded, and we'll go to Bonnie Peterson.
Thank you, Mayor. I certainly, when we were in CIP looking at this, I certainly wanted to vote for it. It's, really good for the community and all. However, we can't always vote for everything we want. Also, I just wanted to clarify for viewers at home that when Alderman Estes talked about bike to Kadoka, that Rapid City would not pay for anything outside of its city limits. We would not pay to go to Kadoka. So some people might be getting upset about that thought. So anyway, I just wanted to relieve you of that notion. I have a question probably for Fred Thurston, if that's Fred, if you can
go ahead and ask your question if you choose.
And Alex, you might just hang out there too, just in case I have something for you. Hi, Fred. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
What kind of private funds can we get for this?
I'm not sure. I honestly don't know. One of the things that I've always considered as a possibility, and that is licensing bicycles. There's controversy about that. I was raised in a community that did license bicycles. I was raised in a community where bicycle trails was not originally available at all. Right now, Palo Alto and Stanford University are considered the #1 university in the United States for bicycle safety, bicycle travel. And a lot of that was funded by the city because of the problems with parking. We talked downtown about needing more parking. I know I worked with Eric when we were doing the college or the VOTEC and about how much they need parking and adding the bicycle to a major means of transportation reduces the need for additional roadways, additional parking lots. I'm not sure all the different ways. I'd be happy to sit down on a committee to discuss it. We have 2 years to find a way to come up with the money. Brad, I really appreciate your support for this idea. And in 2 years, I can't imagine that we can't come up with an extra $200,000.
I think the city we just did away with our licensing bikes that were on the book because it wasn't being enforced. Okay, so you have, because I know you're involved in the biking community now, so you haven't heard there's a lot of donors out there just waiting to step forward and donate money.
I've never asked anybody. I wouldn't be surprised if some of the people here would all come up with some level of a donation toward it, and whether we could make us,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Fred. Can I speak to Jeff Beekler? I have him a question, please.
Sure.
While we're waiting for him to come up, if I could.
Sure.
Talking about private donations, there is the West River Trails Coalition. They are a nonprofit under the Black Hills Area Community Foundation. They have been an integral part of, promoting and pushing this project. They've spent a significant amount of money to do a feasibility study for the entire trail. They have potential to do fundraising. Again, that's just another alternative.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Beegler, you have funds allocated in the CIP funds for Parks and Recs.
Yes.
How would you slate this in priority? Are you willing to take money out of your funds?
Well,
Not to put you on the spot or anything, but where's your priority?
It's something that we could look at. We're kind of up against the clock here, and it's something we could take a look at, certainly, if there is support on the council for this project.
Well, I could get support if I knew where some money was going to come from it, for it. Because, in the long run, I do think it's in the best interest of the city to do so, especially since we're going out toward Western Dakota Tech. But anyway, I think that's all the questions I have right now. I will yield to the floor. Thank you so much.
Before we go to the additional councilites, noting that we have 5 councilites waiting to speak, Jeff, if you could help the council members up here with a hypothetical on what motion you would recommend to help Alderwoman Peterson achieve the goal that she would like to achieve. And I think I'm sensing that there's a desire to do this. So tell us what the options are in terms of motions so that we can provide some clarity for the council discussion.
Well, I think that the agenda item for the approving the original amount of the $100,000 in CIP plus the in-kind service is something that we all know will not satisfy DOT. So I think if we could get an award from the CIP fund of $200,000 plus the in-kind, I think we could probably find the additional, would that be additional 90,000 or so? Or 93,000 in our Parks and Recreation CIP. Now this is twice what the original application amount was, but then we were reduced in our award from the TAP grant.
Thank you. We'll go to John Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You were at the beginning of the queue.
I
right?
was at the beginning
Okay,
of the queue.
I just want to make sure.
And you kind of threw me out of there because I was going to put Jeff on the spot and say, Jeff, you're asking us to make a decision tonight, so I was going to ask you to make that decision. One of the things sitting on the CIP that I found interesting with this was that you brought this forward with us to have 3 weeks from the time it was brought forward until the time you had to apply for the grant, which I didn't think was a lot of time to get anything done, let alone, make the decision on this, even though it wasn't even close to what was brought forward at the beginning. And I know you had no, that wasn't up to you. It was up to the grant people. But it's a tough decision. It's a wonderful project. Everybody, I think, on this dais supports it. But where do we draw the line? We can't fund everything we want to fund. And that's the biggest problem that I have with this. Because once we start funding things with our heart and not with our mind, it's going to put us in a very, very difficult position. So at this point, no matter what you do, Jeff, unless you fund it all, I'm not going to support it. So thank you.
We'll go to Charity Doyle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is something that I've supported from the beginning and actually put it on the radar to be applied for. It is a balancing act, and you know, we hear you. It's not that we are not committed to creating these trails. I mean, look at what's going around on Skyline, you know, M Hill, all these things. Yes, it needs to be extended east, and we're definitely looking to that. But what I'm seeing the potential of here tonight is repeating mistakes of the past, and I'd really caution everybody, because I can see us easily walking into it. Number one, I think the state DOT TAP grant committee has done what councils past have done with the Vision Fund. And that is, we want to make everybody happy, so we're going to give everybody a little bit of money and partially fund their projects so that nobody ever gets their projects done. Look at how much carryover we have for the Vision Fund right now with projects that have been on the books for 5, 6, 7, 8 years that are still incomplete because they were not totally funded. And I can easily see us taking that same route now, and again, I would caution. And then the other thing, you know, making decisions on the fly from the dais is not good business. It's not. I would love to think that the city is in a position where we can take that leap of faith and say, you know, we're going to do this and find it and everything's going to be okay. But then I start to think of all of these other needs, and where everything converges, it's just not a safe business practice. It isn't, for as much as we might want this trail and as much as I might want this trail. I think if we can get our ducks in a row and be in a much better position to know, potentially, number one, give the state some feedback, and hopefully they can learn from our mistakes with the Vision Fund, that maybe you give them that feedback so that perhaps they can modify what they're doing. Fund a few projects well rather than funding a bunch of projects not well. And then just take it from there and put it into that plan. I know we're constantly updating that 5-year plan so that we can get this in the mix so that there aren't the questions and it's not done on the fly. That would be my suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you, Charity, and we'll go to Alderman Jerry Wright. Jerry.
Buying a pickup when you've been drinking impairs your judgment. I think tonight that we're looking at a very popular project that we like. We can get caught up in the moment and maybe make a decision that's not the right one. I know we've got an item tonight of $371,000 and change for Meadowbrook project. That's got to be a chunk of that money in CIP. I know it was discussed at CIP. We just couldn't find the money to do this. It's sad, but I think we do need to deny this and go back and find some more money and work on it and reapply and get the project done, but we just can't do it tonight. I don't think we have the money. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. We'll now go to Alderman Bill Clayton. Bill.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And guys, just so you know, there's two of us up here who are avid bicycle riders. And I'm trying to visualize where, in fact, we're talking about, because if you get on the bike path, it follows the creek, comes down past the fairgrounds, and then ducks under Campbell along the creek. From there, it goes back in behind Family Thrift, and then it turns south, and you end up on St. Patrick Street on the sidewalk until ultimately you get to the Star of the West ball complex. And then from there, you'd have to wind your way north on the streets to find your way, up to the college. So I just, as we begin to talk, and this is big money, and I agree with everything that's been said here, it's like we're staring down the barrel of a shotgun, trying to make a good decision under an inordinate amount of pressure. And I have a feeling that if we're premature, we succumb to the pressure and make a decision. We don't have time to vet it out and look at the whys and the wherefores, and we obligate funds to something that maybe doesn't even get you to where we want to go, because right now the bicycle path leads completely away from where we're trying to get to, and it would entail okay, I'm being shown a map, and if I look away, then I'll be totally gone. So it means something new that somehow intersects what we've already got and goes through uncharted territory, basically, to get there. So I would agree that if the door is open where we can apply for this again, and I have to wonder out loud, we've got federal funds, we're looking at city funds, where does the state fall in on this? Wouldn't it be nice if we got federal funds and some state matching funds to offset some of what is going to come out of the city pocketbook, and able to do this cooperatively at all three levels and really have something we could be proud of rather than trying to make a premature decision. And I'll yield the floor.
I heard a couple of questions in that, Bill.
Okay.
Alex, if you could first answer the question on the route, and then also talk about the federal funding.
Thank you.
Yeah, Bill, you're absolutely correct. The bike path does go under Campbell, and it kind of does, basically right behind Taco John's there, it terminates. And then from there, if you want to go anywhere, it's sidewalks or on street. However, extending the bike path, the recreation opportunities, the commuter opportunities eastward, the best avenue really that we have available would be that abandoned or rail banked, railroad right of way. And of course with WDT and the public library, which Eric Kikis wanted me to mention, combined with that facility, is along the way. So is Star of the West. It's pretty much adjacent to that railroad right of way. So that in itself creates a number of opportunities and other points of destinations. And that's how I think that we're going to get out to, points east. What was the other question? I'm sorry, Mayor.
The question was regarding, right now it's city and state funding. How about the federal aspect of?
I think you have that reversed. I think he said we have, the TAP program is federal funding. The state, there's a number of opportunities through the Recreational Trails program. That application, I believe, is going to be due here the beginning of April. But again, it's not really in the timeline for this project. We could potentially in the future apply for this through that program or a few other projects. However, we kind of need to look at if we're applying for these, are we really committed to it? And if we don't get a partial match, we have to come up with it all on our own at some point.
Could I ask one more question, if I may, Mr. Mayor?
Okay.
Alex, do we have any guarantee that railroad right-of-way would be available to us, or are we hoping more than knowing?
No, there's a lease program that we can lease that railroad right-of-way. Currently, there's nothing inhibiting us from doing that. I believe Patsy and Community Planning have looked at that and what it would take to do that. I think you have a few members of the audience tonight that are in the development game, and they're looking at some of that potential too to tie in with some of their future development and that sort of thing.
Okay, thank you. I'll yield the floor.
We'll go to Alderman Chad Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry to keep going on this, but I do have a couple questions left for Mr. Bugler, please, or Alex, one of the two. Pauline Sumption had mentioned there's a $1.2 million carryover from the park CIP from last year, from 2013. Is that money already spoken for?
Yes, it is.
Okay, yeah, for current projects?
For current projects, correct.
Okay, that kind of kills that idea, I guess. If we were to approve any other money out of your budget, you don't have any more room in your budget, obviously, at this point.
Well, no, not in any of the operating budgets. No.
Guess that's not going to help much.
Let me, excuse me, just
Sure.
Not all of the carryover is committed. There is a little bit of additional contingency money that's.
Approximately how much?
I don't have that in front of me. I'm sorry.
200,000. Throwing it out there.
I don't have that in front of me.
I guess my question would be: is if we were to make any approvals for any of that money, would we need do we have to procedurally go through the Parks and Rec Board first, or can we do that from the dais here, since they're in recommending body? Can anybody answer that question for me, Pauline?
Legally, you could do it here.
You do it,
Procedurally,
okay.
it's typically done through.
Okay, I guess that would be my question there. And one more question. Does anybody know how the recent Supreme Court ruling regarding the Rails to Trails projects would affect this project going forward? Does anybody have answers for that? Because I know there's potential for some legal issues to start arising with the Mickelson Trail in particular and maybe new projects going forward.
That's a good point, Chad. Yes, the Supreme Court just made a ruling that abandoned railroad right-of-way, I'm going to try to get this correct for you as best I can. Currently, that railroad right-of-way is rail-banked. I believe the Supreme Court ruling refers to abandoned railroad right-of-way that automatically reverts back to the property owner, adjacent property owners.
Okay. Well, I would love to, I don't want to kill this issue tonight. I know there's not a lot of will up here to do this, but I think we can see what the Mickelson Trail has done for the area up north. And I've ridden the trail with Mr. Thurston, actually, and my wife and some other folks, and it's obviously brings a lot of economic impact into the community, a lot of tourism. And it's obviously very, promotes healthy lifestyles, et cetera. So I would love to see someone make a motion. I probably won't get it to find another way to fund this, but I would definitely appreciate that. I mean, I have my support.
We'll go to Brad Estes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I appreciate the comments by my friend Alderman Wright, but I haven't bought a pickup while drinking for a long time, so I'm gonna do something here. I'm going to make a substitute motion, if I could, to approve this project contingent upon Parks and Rec going back and first of all asking the state for the end of the week and having Parks and Rec go back and see if they can find over a 2-year period this missing $193,000 and see if they can put this thing to bed.
We have a motion and a second. Jeff, do you understand the motion? Okay.
Yes.
And are you okay with that? I mean, if that motion
Yes.
passes, would you be able to comply with that motion?
Absolutely.
Okay. Brad, you still have the floor. Would you mind explaining your motion one more time? I think everybody understands it, but
Sure,
one more
Mr.
time
Mayor.
for us.
I understand there's a time constraint, so we'd have to call the state and say, you know what, we're working on this. We got till could we give you an answer at the end of the week? We understand there's some carryover and there might be some contingencies. So if Mr. Biegler could sit down and look at his budget and see if over a 2-year period out of the Parks and Rec CIP they could come up with $100,000 the next 2 years and make this thing work. And that's my motion.
Okay. Alex.
I just want to see if I have that right. So the TAP program offered us $207,000. You're suggesting allocating the $200,000 from the grant match, and then Parks tries to find $200,000. Was that which?
Well, it's my understanding, talking to our finance officer, that you're short where you are short $193,000 because didn't you already allocate $100,000?
CIP has authorized $100,000 from the capital grant matching fund line item, as long as you approve that as well.
You guys understand the motion?
Yes.
Okay.
Does that add up? Excuse me. Does that add up then, Alex? Does that make sense? Because that's what I understand you're short.
Yes.
So.
Charlene, do you have that motion down? Could you repeat it back from your perspective just to make sure your minutes reflect Alderman S.'s intent?
What I'm understanding is that Park and Rec is supposed to go back to the state to see if they can get a time extension to the end of this week. And Park and Rec is, over that time period, to try to identify the additional $200,000 that is needed to make this project work out of their budget. Between now and the next 2 years, they can find that $200,000 somewhere in there. So the final funding, if they can find it all, would be $100,000 from the CIP grant match line item, the almost $100,000 in-kind match, and then the balance of $200,000 coming somewhere from the Park and Rec budget.
Yeah, the Parks and Rec CIP budget, the.
Park and Rec, okay. Park and Rec
And we're
CIP.
calling that 193,200, but yeah, that's,
And if I could get a clarification on who seconded the motion?
Second was by Lewis.
Thank you.
So let's go to our city attorney briefly. Joel, was this something that we would need to have a special council meeting and reconvene and authorize the expenditure, or can it be authorized now in terms of a contingent motion? I just want to make sure that we're properly doing this.
I don't know, that's kind of a tough one to throw at me at the last minute here. I think your safest course of action is to have the council approve it once the decision's made, so.
I would agree.
I agree.
Okay, so if this motion passes, we'll be asking Charlene in finance and Pauline in finance to probably contact all of you to find a time for a special council meeting.
Ready?
We're not going to be able to
We have the
figure out when that
equalization
meeting's
board.
going to be now, but let's see what happens with this motion, and then we're probably going to need to reconvene. We got 4 more lights. Let's go through the rest of these lights. Let's first go to our Public Works Director, Terry Waltersdorf. Terry.
Thank you, Mayor. Just from a timing standpoint, you're not actually authorizing signing a grant agreement or anything like that. So this is going to come back through you again. I think what the state wants to know is whether the council's committed to finding the matching funds. So I think if you guys take your action on this tonight, that'll give the direction that Alex needs to send to the state so they can make their formal decision on exactly what they're allocating to Rapid City. Then there'll be grant documents that come forward. I mean, this is just the first of multiple steps that need to happen. So I don't think you're going to have a special council meeting at this point.
Okay. We'll go to Amanda Scott.
Thank you, Mayor. May I address some questions to Alex and Mr.
You
Jeff
may.
Bigler? Thank you. Alex, I thought the deadline was tomorrow.
It is for an answer from, like Terry said, I mean, we need to show our commitment.
So
At the greater portion on the city's dime, basically.
So I believe the motion that's currently before the city council says that you're supposed to contact the state and see if you can wiggle another 3 or 4 days in order to give you guys some time in the Parks and Rec department to come up with another roughly $200,000. So is there that wiggling room? Because if there is, there's a CIP meeting on Friday.
Yeah, and I believe that was what Mr. Estes was trying to accomplish with that. That's a tough one to answer.
The problem I have with this motion currently on the floor is that it goes diametrically opposed to what you've presented, what you need from the council tonight.
I think with a positive vote tonight, and again, it has to go to TAP and say, hey, look, this is what our council wanted us to do. You know, it presents the opportunity rather than denying the $100,000 or approving the $100,000 and saying, well, we can only commit this much. It shows that we're invested and we're looking to try to make this happen. And I believe that would keep this project on the books. They already have it on the books. So yes, I think it would.
I think in order to garner full support on this motion, Mr. Bigler, I have yet to hear you say you have the money. Do you have the money? Because it's not coming from any other source.
Yes, I think we could probably find the money.
There's that I think again. Do you have the money?
If I could answer. You know, I think with the motion that we've made and talking about the $100,000 that was originally shown on the legal and finance that was brought forward on this motion, that still leaves $100,000 in that CIP grant match fund. I don't think we're tapping that to the potential that we could be.
I do not believe that option has currently been discussed. The motion that was made was that the funding sources would come out of the Parks and Recs CIP fund. Can you guys juggle things around? Do you have the $200,000?
Let me interject here. Gentlemen, what would suggestions been made, and I think it's a good suggestion, is give you a chance to look at the numbers. Could we continue? It's rare, but we have continued items to other parts of the agenda. If we could get a substitute motion to continue item 29 until after 61, that gives the rest of the agenda to pull together the numbers, and we can make this our last item on the agenda tonight.
Point of order, Mayor. Do we have?
You still have the floor. So
Yeah. Point of order. Do we need to dismiss one? I believe we have two motions on the floor
No,
at this time. We don't.
We have room for one more motion, and that's a second substitute.
Thank you, Mayor. I will make that substitute motion.
Well, you've already spoken, so you can't. But
Okay.
So we have a motion by Roberts and a second by Peterson for a second substitute motion to continue this item until after item 61, after the bill list. So this stays on tonight's agenda, and there is no room for any additional substitute motions. There's only room for a substitute motion and a second substitute motion. Is there any discussion on the second substitute motion? And I have three lights. Let's go to these lights first. Please
Mayor?
remove yourself. We'll come back to you, and you already gave up the floor because somebody else made a motion. We'll come back to you in just a moment, Amanda. Steve Laurenti, let's go to you, and then we'll go back to Amanda Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I almost hate to speak on this because it's just been going on, but with the new motion, I felt like I needed to speak because I want to make sure that I support moving it to the end as well, but I want to make sure that I just want to caution Mr. Beigler, our director, that as you're thinking about this, I want to make sure that we are not sacrificing some higher priority project that comes back to the council, and for some reason everybody has forgotten after the crowds have left and everybody got their way with the bike path, that we now have to deal with something else that didn't get funded through this money that you've now earmarked or not. I just want to make sure that those priorities that you're thinking about that, and I'm not telling you something you already know, but I'm just concerned at this point based on the fact that we're trying to rush to an approval because we all want this. But I just wanted to caution you that those priorities are there. So
I appreciate
that.
Just wanted to mention that I was asked if what our priorities were, and our projects and our budget priorities are, I guess they're all like our children. How do you say which one is your favorite? They're all important to us, and so that's why this is a very important decision.
And I appreciate that. I just wanted to finish with, I want you to feel like, obviously, you're empowered to say no. I mean, obviously, you know that you're a director. I shouldn't have to tell you that. But the fact of the matter is, I think you have support here. If you come back and tell us no, that you can't do that because of these other priorities, I think you also have that support here on the council. Thank you.
Amanda Scott.
Thank you, Mayor. And Alex and Mr. Bigler, the other point I was getting to in my questioning is and I'm glad this item has been moved until the end of the agenda to give you time to think about this. What I'm trying to strive at, Alex, is if all you're looking for is a commitment from the council for support so that you can call the TAP program back and say, yes, there is full support, then what I'm asking you to consider is if you don't have the identifying funding source, but you think you can get it, you know you can get it, you're committed to finding it. If what you need from the council tonight is a motion simply that states, yes, we are for this program and we believe the Parks and Recs director will find the money in the CIP. I mean, see where I'm going with that? So why I'm trying to hammer you on the money is I believe the council needs a commitment from you that you have the money and then we're committed to following through with this grant opportunity, but you've got to be able to have the confidence that says that you're going to start the ball rolling first. So that's the point I wanted to make. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'd like to go to our finance officer, Pauline Sumption. Pauline, if you could answer also, what is our balance for council contingency for this year? Another option. Maybe you don't want to do it, but it's another option. So go ahead.
I don't believe we've used anything in council contingency, so it would be $150,000 that would be there. However, a question was asked earlier of Mr. Beigler about how much contingency is in his CIP budget. With our meeting coming up on Friday, the agenda was posted today. According to the spreadsheet, there's $504,000 in your contingency line item for your 2014 capital plan.
All right. You guys have some time to crunch numbers, so any further discussion on the motion? Again, the motion is to continue this to later in tonight's agenda to be after item 61. All in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We are now on item number 34.
Seriously?
Go ahead.
Okay. Item number 34 is authorize the mayor and finance officer to sign Wells Fargo equipment and vehicle finance application for the city's 2014 funding needs. I yield the floor.
Floor has been yielded. Do we have a motion? Okay, we'll go to Amanda Scott.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll make that motion to approve item number 34 and retain the floor.
Okay, we have a motion by Scott and a second by Nordstrom. Amanda, you have the floor.
Thank you. May I ask Pauline Sumption a couple questions, please?
Go ahead.
Okay, then I will not ask Pauline Sumption some questions at this time, but I will make a comment that currently what's before us on item number 34 is a loan funding of $1.3 million. However, it covers 3 different sources from the way I read it. My question, and I'm asking for a follow-up to the council through email or whatever, is to actually let us know of that $1.3 million, how much is allocated to come out of general funds over the next payment years, how much is to come out of the drainage utility fund over the next loan payment years, and how much is to come out of the ambulance enterprise fund. So from my understanding, there's 2 enterprise funds and a general fund. And Pauline, you look like you want to speak now.
You are correct, and I apologize. I had made the note to ask Tracy about that, and I totally failed to do so. So that's on me. I'll send an email out to you on that.
Thank you. I yield the floor.
Any further discussion on item number 34? The motion is for approval. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 37,
Thank
Mr.
you,
Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item number 37 is Resolution 2014-030 to approve establishing a position for the City of the position of City Communications Coordinator and adding a full-time equivalent to the Community Resources budgeted head count. And I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Who pulled this? Amanda did. I think she pulled it.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm in favor of this. The only reason I pulled this is that this is creating that communication coordinator, and I'm really hoping that this person has the ability to build some really good relationships with our media in order to get some public service announcements out there that will not be too costly to the media organizations themselves, but if the newscasters and the radio announcers could periodically make those public service announcements after major storm events about clearing off sidewalks or moving your cars so that street sweepers could get through. I really am looking forward to this position really taking off. And I realize the person hired will have to have a little bit of time to build those relationships, but I'm really excited about this. I think that will be a big step in doing big things and promoting the saying that we've got going through the CVB board. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Everyone understands the motion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 39.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item number 39 is request by Fisk Land Surveying and Consulting Engineers for E. Jason Stamper for Stamper Black Hills Gold Jewelry Inc. for a property generally described as being located at 7201 South Highway 16. I move approval for a petition for annexation.
We have a motion by Lewis and a second by Peterson on item 39. Amanda Scott.
Thank you, Mayor. May I ask Mr. Actually, I think it would be Mr. Wolsterstorff a question, but I don't know if Mr. Limbaugh's group is actually doing this. So can I direct the question at both of those people, please?
Sure.
Thank you. This is an application for an annexation into our city, and starting in 2015, all additional property that are incorporated within the city limits of Rapid City will be paying that drainage utility fee. And so my question is I think we need to get the word out that people need to know that this new fee will be coming up in 2015 and everybody is going to pay for it, no matter what the classification of their property is. So, Mr. Limbaugh, my first question to you is are you aware if the applicant was told that by annexing into the city, obviously they're going to pay city property taxes, but were they told about the new drainage utility fee that'll be coming up? Because calculated out, I'm showing that it's going to be $1,291.47 a year that will be added to what they need to pay the city.
You know, not being the project manager on this case, I don't know if they were told or not.
Okay. And Mr. Wolsterstorff, do you have any ideas on when we're going to start getting the word out about people paying this drainage utility? I know there was some discussion on doing a pre-mailing to all the property owners, or you know, getting some information out there as far as what each individual parcel will be paying?
We're starting to stray off course, so if you please keep your answer brief.
I will. Yes,
Well, I can direct it to this. Do we have a plan in place to address any new platted property, rezoning, or annexation property and let them know that this is going to be an additional fee coming up?
We have not had that discussion with the planning staff.
All right, thank you. I yield the floor.
Any further discussion on item number 39? Everyone understands the motion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We are now on item number 43, and we'll go to our Legal and Finance Chairman to read this into the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item number 43 is approve award of a total bid for 3 current new model year half-ton 4x4 crew cab short box pickups opened on March 11, 2014 to the lowest responsible bidder, Scott Peterson Motors, in the amount of $79,239.24, and I yield the floor.
There's been some questions that have come up on this. If we go to our finance officer or city attorney to address the concerns. All right, we'll just go to the floor. We'll go to Jerry Wright.
I'm sure the concerns are the request of a local in-town dealer bidding against out-of-town dealer, correct? And can we do it preferential? I don't think we can we?
No. I had sent out an email later this afternoon to the mayor and finance officer after I became aware of it. The communication to you from the sales manager at McKee Ford stated you do not have to bid award to lowest. I don't know where he's getting his information, but that is not the law. You are required legally to award to the lowest responsible bidder.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any further discussion on the motion? Okay. All in favor say aye.
There wasn't a motion.
Okay. We have a motion by Peterson and a second by Wright. Everyone understands the motion. This is the motion to award or approve the bid as noted. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. That takes us to the end of consent items. We are going to take a recess, and we'll come back at 8:30. 8:30. We're going to reconvene shortly. If everyone could please take their seats. We're going to be reconvening the meeting shortly. We are back in session. We are now on non-consent items 45 through 54. Public comment is now open. We did have the chairman of our Human Relations Commission, Mel Sayo, here, and he had to leave early, so we will skip his speaker request form, but he had planned to speak tonight. We will go on to item number 48. Scott Ingman would like to talk on item number 48, and just so everyone knows what item number 48 is as he's coming up, it's a request by Fisk Land Surveying and Consulting Engineers for Black Hills Area Habitat for Humanity for a preliminary subdivision plan for property generally described as being located at 925 Dulger Avenue. Mr. Ingman, you have the floor.
I am Scott Ingman, the Executive Director of Black Hills Area Habitat for Humanity. I'm here this evening with some members of our board and committees who have worked really hard on this project over the last year or so. And we're really excited and enthused about the redevelopment of the old Garfield School. This is a wonderful, wonderful opportunity. It's a chance to bring more affordable housing right into our city core, and I think we all know how important that is. Our project comes before you with the recommendation of approval from both the city staff and the planning department. This evening we're asking for your support and vote of approval on this agenda item. Thank you very much for your time and your attention.
Thank you, Scott. We do not have any more speaker request forms for that item, so now we'll move on to a couple of speaker request forms for item 53. And we'll first go to Ed Randazzo on item 53. Item 53, by the way, is the authorizing the mayor and finance officer to sign amended developers agreement with President's Plaza. Mr. Randazzo, you have the floor. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Ed Randazzo. I rise tonight to ask a question as a resident of Rapid City Ward 2.
And Mr. Randazzo, just so you know, you can ask your question, but the answers will not come, if at all. But if they come, it won't be until the council has a chance to speak or staff has a chance to speak, depending on what your question is.
I understand, Mayor. Thank you. I'm alarmed over some statements printed in the Rapid City Journal this past Sunday regarding the President's Plaza project. Now, I'm well aware of the Journal's dubious record in getting it right, and I hope that they didn't in this case. Why do I say this? Because in this article, Council President Wright accuses Mayor Quaker of opposing this project and of failure to do his job. If those charges are accurately presented by the Journal, I find them to be offensive, mean-spirited, and inexcusable. In point of fact, it's public record that the mayor has supported this project from its inception 6 years ago. Now, in my view, this project has never been adequately researched as to the financial responsibility and stability of these developers that continually make broad, general statements based on hopes, not facts. If requesting less documentation from the developer than you would expect to produce for an auto loan is a problem for the developer, then I expect there are far more problems with this project than we can even imagine. It seems to me that the council president should be supportive, not provocatively combative, especially in media. The mayor was elected by the citizens of this entire city, not just one ward, and I applaud his efforts to protect the taxpayers from possibly shouldering the burden of a costly mistake. Now, my question is this. Someone owes Mayor Quaker an apology. Is it the Rapid City Journal, or is it the council president? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Randazzo. And also on item 53, we have Marnie Herman. Good evening, Marnie.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for the stretch break. That was helpful. I'm Marnie Herman. I'm here tonight speaking on behalf of the Rapid City Area Chamber of Commerce as the chair-elect for the Board of Directors. Mayor Quaker and Council. The concept of President's Plaza downtown development has captivated many of us over the last several years. Since 2006, conversations around what this project will do for our downtown have kept our interest in seeing it through to completion. We have been told there are many reasons that this project has been delayed. On behalf of the Rapid City Area Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors, our 1,200 members, and their 33,000 employees, we write to you today to ask that you end the delays and engage in the actions needed to bring President's Plaza to fruition. Excuse me. The mission of the Rapid City Chamber is to promote a strong business climate in the Black Hills. We seek to work with businesses and government bodies to grow our local economy. We strongly believe that the President's Plaza development supports the mission, vision, and goals of the Chamber and our members. We have all seen the positive impact of our vibrant downtown and the impact it has had on the economic vitality of our city. One cannot deny that the successful revitalization efforts downtown directly result in an increased quality of life for our citizens. The completion of the President's Plaza project will magnify those efforts and will continue the positive progress of our downtown core. The Rapid City Area Chamber of Commerce believes that the President's Plaza is a solid economic investment in our community. This project addresses needs critical to the continued vitality of the downtown area, including increased job opportunities, residential living, parking, and expanded commercial and business development space. In closing, we encourage our mayor and council to proceed with the President's Plaza project in the true spirit of partnership for the benefit of our entire community. This has been delayed long enough, and it is time to get this project underway. And I do have this statement in the form of a letter addressed to Mayor Quaker, and we have copies for all the council members, if I may give those to you.
Thank you very much, Marnie. We do not have any additional speaker request forms on items 45 through 54. Have I missed anyone? Items 45 through 54. Seeing none, public comment is now closed on items 45 through 54. We are now on item number 45, and we'll go to Chad Lewis to read this into the record for us.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item number 45 is a second reading of Ordinance 5964, an ordinance to revise the powers, duties, and process of the Human Relations Commission by amending Chapter 2.464 of the Rapid City Municipal Code. I yield the floor.
Floor has been yielded. Do we have a motion? We have a motion by Laurenti, second by Peterson. We'll go to Bonnie Peterson.
Thank you, Mayor. 2 weeks ago I'd asked for this to be continued, and I still have concerns about the, checking the fiscal background, because people's fiscal check could be determined by their spouse's spending habits, not their own, and also that 40% of bankruptcies are for medical health reasons and not for poor financial planning. So, but I'm fine with it. I can live with it to get the support. Thank you.
Alderman Richie Nordstrom. Richie.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to say to the business community, I thank you for your time and your comments that you made to me directly. I brought them forward to all your concerns to the city attorney that addressed those issues. So hopefully some of those, can't get all of them through, but I believe some of them have been addressed in some fashion. And I agree with Alderwoman Peterson that there are some very serious concerns on my part, but I'm still going to wind up supporting this, primarily because of the one concern that I have is, as Alderwoman Peterson pointed out, is the background check on the people, and how that proceeds, and the functions, and getting into the details and how they do the background checks. The other area of concern that I have on that also is, to me, it looks like we're trying to come up with a quota on this, and I'll need somebody's help here to identify where this is at in the ordinance, but it had to do with three business people having a background. Am I stating that correctly? That are to be on the, if that still remains into the ordinance as we're supporting it at this time, and that creates another issue, I think we need to come back and take another look at that to one area that needs fixing. With that said, I'm going to support it at this time, but I think we need to be very cautious about the direction that this quota is establishing on this, because that just sets a bad precedent when we're not trying to do quotas through the Human Relations Commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Richie, and we'll go to Alderwoman Amanda Scott. Amanda.
Thank you, Mayor. As I stated a couple weeks ago, I can support the current reading of the ordinance, even with the amendments. One of the conversations the mayor and I had is we did discuss, as Richie Nordstrom commented on the what Richie referred to as quorum of 3 business seats. The mayor had a good point. What the mayor told me is that it said business experience. So that person doesn't have to be an owner or a CEO of a business. As long as they're engaged in some sort of business, we would encourage them to fulfill a seat on the Human Relations Commission and help us serve and make sure that there are fair hearings from all the interested parties that come to fruition. Is that a correct? That's the way the mayor and I understood it, Wade. Is that correct?
Mr.
I'm
Mayor.
sorry, Mayor, may I address?
Yeah, you may.
Thank
We'll
you.
recognize Wade Nyberg, our Assistant City Attorney.
That's correct. It's experience or reputation of having expertise in operating or managing a business.
Thank you, Wade. So I did want to address that since Alderman Nordstrom had brought that up. However, if I may ask our City Attorney Joel Ledeen a question?
You may.
Thank you. Joel, if you wouldn't mind, in order to keep everything above board, because I know there's been a lot of controversy over, how this board would act and how it would interact with the public and everything else. There was an unnoticed executive session held in their meeting last week. And if you wouldn't mind giving us an update on how that occurred and what was the actions taken to address training and reaffirming how executive sessions should take place?
We'll go to our City Attorney, Joel Landine. Joel.
Thank you, Mayor. The Human Relations Commission entered into an executive session for the stated purpose of discussing personnel. There were not staff present in the meeting, so I can't tell you what specifically was discussed there. It's my understanding there were some concerns of the commission on the last-minute changes before the last meeting to the ordinance, and they wanted to discuss that, and the fact staff had helped draft those. I spoke to a member of the Human Relations Commission that had suggested the executive session. I explained to them that we did not support adding items to the agenda at the adoption of the agenda unless it was absolutely necessary, that any item on an agenda that was going to be discussed, in particular if you were going to take action on it, would need to be noticed beforehand. There was no action taken based on the executive session, so I think that would minimize any concern about the executive session. So I attended the Human Relations Commission meeting on Friday, and we had a pretty detailed discussion about adding items to the agenda and executive sessions just to make sure that we were all on the same page moving forward. And they appreciated that and indicated that in the future they would probably look at doing things differently. So acknowledge that they probably shouldn't have handled it the way it was handled. And after that, they acknowledged that what had been said and that they would follow that in the future. And that was the end of the matter.
Thank you, Joel. I, again, serve as a liaison on the Human Relations Commission, and our City Assistant Attorney, Wade Nyberg, is the one that sits in and advises the commission. The one nice thing about all of our city commissions and committees is they are an independent body. We like that free thinking and that free thought to come forward, but we do need to make sure that we follow all the guidelines and the way public public meetings are supposed to be conducted. So I appreciate that, Joel, and I appreciate all your work, Wade. Thank you. I yield the floor.
Thank you, Amanda. We'll go to Brad Estes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could I ask a question of Joel?
You may.
Please, quick. Joel, when you look at a commission like this Human Relations Commission, and it's set up, it has no budget, it has no employees, so therefore they should have no personnel, and I don't believe they have contracts with anybody. Is there any reason ever that they should have the authority to go into executive session?
I'm not going to say that they should never have the authority to, but I definitely think that it's something that should be discussed with my office. And the reason I say that is obviously we typically are involved in executive session because the permissible reasons for executive session are personnel, contractual matters, or consulting with legal counsel. There may be a need to provide them legal advice or consult with legal counsel, but that should definitely be discussed in advance. And in fairness to Wade, Wade did advise them against going into executive session and did express many of the concerns that I went over with them. And that was part of the concern with them going into executive session. However, I think there could be reason for them to in the future. I would not want to say they should never go into executive session. In fairness to the Human Relations Commission, I think that was part of what they were confused about, in that my office is tasked with staffing their meetings. So Wade attends all of their meetings and advises them and provides them staff support. And so does Stacy Lundy from my office, take minutes, prepares the agendas. So I can understand why they might be confused and think that the staff worked for them. However, the staff does not work for them. The staff is just tasked with assisting them in doing their duties. And that was part of the discussion we had on Friday, clarifying staff's role in that, you know, the staff did not technically work for them.
Thank you. I yield, Mayor. Thanks.
We'll go to Charity Doyle.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate it. You know, from my understanding, this commission is supposed to be down the middle, neutral, unbiased, looking out for anybody that is being brought to the table based on a complaint. Is that correct?
You're looking at me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, just checking, just double checking. And I believe that the commissioners absolutely believe that they're doing what's right in requesting these expanded powers. And I also believe that the council members who might have differing views are doing fully what they believe is right. And I guess I just find it a little disconcerting at times that some of the commissioners can't buy into, hey, yes, I believe the council members are doing what they believe is right, and instead try to create this animosity. Not all the commissioners, just some of them. And I bring that up because people in the public that have been watching this debate over the last several months have brought up those same concerns. And the question that was posed to me is this: if some of the commissioners can't respect you as council people who would give them these expanded powers, how can I as a business owner or an employer or a landlord trust that I'll be given that same respect if I have to be brought to the table? And I think it's a fair question. I think it's an absolutely fair question. And right now, from some of the things that I've seen, and you know, we've talked about lapses in judgment, I'm glad that's getting rectified, but is anything going to be written down? Would it be better to actually get these procedures down in writing so that there's no room for making these errors again? Potentially, you know, a decision made like that could put the city at risk. It could blow a case for one of these complainants. It could put the respondent in a bad position. I just think that, you know, it did raise a fair question, and I just see it as incongruent, particularly for a commission that's supposed to be unbiased. And although I appreciate some of the concessions that have been made to help alleviate the concerns from the business community, I still at this time, based on some of the things I've seen, cannot trust that it's going to be fair to everybody, and so I still can't support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on item 45? There's a motion on the floor to approve. All in favor? Richie Nordstrom.
Mayor, I apologize for the confusion here. I'm looking at two ordinances revised on 3.3, or one is on 3.3.14 and the other one is 3.3.14. Which one are we working on? Is it the right proposal or is it the attorney recommended second reading?
Wade, help us out.
It should be the one, it's linked to the agenda and it's dated as 3/3/2014. The one that says attorney recommended doesn't have all the newest changes in it.
Thank you.
Everyone understands which version we're voting on.
You say it does?
It's not the one that says attorney recommended because that doesn't have all the amendments in it. It's the other one.
The amendments.
It does say right proposal, I guess.
It does say that right proposal? Yes. Okay. Richie, you still have the floor.
Oh, sorry, Mayor. I'll yield the floor.
Bonnie Peterson.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question for Wade, if that's okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. Wade, I think I was liaison for 2 years or close to 2 years on this committee, and I don't recall they ever went in executive session. Is this something they routinely do? Or
No.
or have done?
I can't really think of another occasion when they've gone into executive session.
Okay.
Go
ahead.
If it's all right, I just wanted to point out that our office has looked at how things would be done with a new ordinance, and there is probably a likelihood of executive sessions because the confidentiality requirements of this, when we'll go and investigate a complaint, and then when we bring them the report, they're going to have to discuss that in executive session outside of a public meeting for their initial probable cause determination. And so all that information is required to be confidential by law, and so that would be there's another exception in the open meeting statute that would allow that. But that's something moving forward that with our office doing the investigations, that's a possibility in the future, or probability, I guess.
Okay, thank you. I would just say that, I was surprised 2 weeks ago when all these changes were brought in. I found out about them around 5-ish, right before council, so I was surprised. So I could see where, the people in the committee could have been surprised or not know what to do. So I know they routinely don't go into executive session, so I don't see them as being power hungry or abusive. I think it was more like confused people, and hopefully the commission will, whenever there's new members, will be trained that the rules under which they can go into executive session, and then if the attorney is there and they're go rogue again, that they will be halted so that, so everybody's kind of clear in their role with that. So thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie. We'll go to Alderman Jerry Wright. Jerry.
Just to clarify, make sure the issue or the item that we're voting on includes the 4 changes of membership, background checks, the no solicitation, and the referral. I believe those are the 4, and those are included in the item that we're voting on.
That's correct.
And that is which item, sir?
It's the one that's titled right proposal. It's dated 3/3/2014, and it
right proposal. Oh, okay.
It gained your name.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Any further discussion? Everyone understands the motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Roll call, please.
Lorente. Estes. Peterson. Lewis. Doyle. Wright.
Yes.
Scott. Nordstrom. Roberts. Clayton. Motion carries 7-3.
Thank you, everyone. Good discussion. We're now on item number 46. Chad Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item number 46 is the second reading of ordinance number 5973, an ordinance amending provisions concerning garbage and refuse collection in newly annexed areas by amending section 8.08.030 of the Rapid City Municipal Code. I move approval.
We have a motion by Lewis and a second by Laurenti to approve item 46. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Opposed, motion carries. Chad, go ahead and read 47 too.
Thank you, sir. First reading of ordinance 5983, an ordinance amending section 17.06 of chapter 17 of the Rapid City Municipal Code, resuming the within described property as requested by Jared DuPont from General Agricultural District to Light Industrial District for property generally described as being located west of Creek Drive between Center Street and East St. Patrick Street. And I move approval.
We have a motion by Lewis and a second by Laurenti on item number 47. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 48, this is a community planning item. Richie, will go to you. Item 48.
Thank you, Mayor. Item 48 is a request by Fisk Land Surveying and Consulting Engineers Incorporated for a Black Hills Area Habitat for Humanity for the property generally described as being located at 925 Dilger Avenue. I move to approve.
Second.
With stipulations.
We have a motion by Nordstrom and a second by Laurenti to approve with stipulations.
That's the motion.
We'll go to Jerry Wright on item 48.
I have one question of the project engineer representing the owner. I had a discussion with the our Public Works Department. I understand the stipulation is for a 22-foot right-of-way, but the preliminary plat only shows 20. Will that be corrected? The answer is...
Janelle, if you could come state your name for the record and your answer.
Good evening. My name is Janelle Fink. I'm with Fisk Land Surveying here on behalf of Habitat for Humanity. The answer to the question is yes, typically we submit drawings, and as we move forward to the next phases of platting, the stipulations will be effective.
So the 22-foot right-of-way will be platted on the final plat?
Yes.
Thank you.
We'll now go to Alderwoman Bonnie Peterson. Bonnie.
Thank you, Mayor. When I first started on the council, this was in my ward, and I was so excited to see this project. I was like, all right. So I sure hope that when you get further along that you'll invite us, the public or whatever, to come take a looky-loo. Because anyway, I just hated to see that shrine to history just, sit there and become obsolete or deteriorate further. So I'm very excited. So thank you.
We'll go to Richie Nordstrom.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to applaud the group for coming forward with this project, and you've got my full support on this. And yes, we did run across a couple of bumps in the road to get there to the means, but what you're also addressing, and thank you very much for taking on one of my pet projects, is affordable housing, and not just affordable housing, but this will be quality affordable housing. So thank you very much for doing this project. Thank you.
And we'll go to John Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Bonnie, this is in my ward now where it belongs. And Scott, I want to say thank you very much. This has been a great project from the very beginning. I supported it, and I think it's wonderful that you're doing this in North Rapid and also in that area. So I just want to say thank you for everything Habitat has done for our ward. Thank you.
Brad Estes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to say thanks also for the work of all the volunteers for Habitat for Humanity and Scott and your staff. Thanks.
Charity Doyle.
Well, I was feeling left out. Everybody's talking on this one. So I have to tell a quick story. My grandmother lived in the house around the corner from this school, and so I remember playing there as a kid and what it looked like. And then growing up, I wasn't over there a whole lot. I was east side. Moving back here, however, and driving around the neighborhood and seeing how dilapidated the area was, it was really sad because I remembered as a kid it looked completely different. So I applaud. I think this is just the coolest idea that's come along in a while. And again, I think we should get the first tour. So.
Any further discussion on item 48? Chad Lewis.
I just didn't want to be the only one that didn't say something on it. I've a little left out. And since Mr. Ingman signed my petition for re-election, I suppose I better Tell them. No, honestly, I think it's a great idea, and I wholeheartedly approve anything you can do to promote for affordable housing in a situation like this. So anyway, thanks a lot.
Amanda Scott.
Thank you, Mayor. Chad was not the last one that hasn't spoke on this, so I will also say thank you, and I believe the only one left is Mr. or Alderman Clayton. He might want to say thank you as well, so thank you.
Bill Clayton.
Call the question. No, me too. Congratulations for all you do, because you know it's tough getting volunteers and volunteers for a project like that, where it's tough work, is really admirable. And anytime a group comes together to make our city a better place, I'm all for it, and I love to see it. So hooray for volunteerism and hooray for you guys. Thank you.
Any further discussion on item number 48? Motion is for approval with stipulations. Seeing no further lights, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, everyone. Item number 49, Richie.
Thank you, Mayor. Item 49 is a request by Dream Design International Incorporated for a preliminary subdivision plan for proposed lots and blocks in Rainbow Ridge subdivision, generally described as being located at west of Bunker Drive at the current western terminus of Gladys Street and Alma Street. I move to approve with stipulations.
Second. Motion by Nordstrom, second by Scott. Any discussion on item 49? Seeing none. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. 50, Richie.
Item 50 is a request by Spurlick Consulting Incorporated for Sodak Development Company for a preliminary subdivision plan for proposed lots and blocks of Homestead subdivision, generally described as being located at north of the existing terminus of Hawkins Street. I move to approve with stipulations. Second.
Motion by Nordstrom, second by Roberts to approve with stipulations. Item 50, any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. 51.
Item 51 is a request by Spurlick Consulting Incorporated for ZCO Incorporated for a preliminary subdivision plan for proposed lots and blocks of Elk Country Estates, generally described as being located at southeast of the intersection of Padre Drive and Jolly Lane. And I move to acknowledge the applicant's withdrawal.
We have motion by Nordstrom, second by Scott to acknowledge the applicant's withdrawal on item 51. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. 52.
Item 52 is a request by Renner and Associates LLC for Greg and Elizabeth Gokin for a preliminary subdivision plan for proposed tracts of Section 26, generally described as being located lying approximately 600 feet north of the intersection of U.S. Highway 16 and Catron Boulevard on the west side of U.S. Highway 16. I move to approve with stipulations.
Second. Motion by Nordstrom, second by Scott to approve item 52 with stipulations. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We are now on item number 53. Chad Lewis.
Authorize the mayor and finance officer to sign amended developers agreement with Presidential Plaza, and I yield the floor.
Did you want to make a motion, or did you yield the floor? Okay. So, for as yield, we have a motion to deny. Do you want to hold the floor? Go ahead. You better have one. All right. We have a motion by Laurenti and a second by Clayton for denial, and Steve, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm a little confused why this is still on the agenda, with the fact that all of my colleagues are aware that the developer has agreed to go back to the original agreement at from the December council meeting. So I'm a little surprised that this is on the agenda, for one. But I wanted to speak on it because I have read some of the stuff that the Journal has printed as well. And Mr. Randazzo, I think, talked about that a little bit. And I'm a little disturbed that a lot of the things in the agreement, which has been part of the public record for a very long time, unfortunately did not make the Rapid City Journal. It's very disappointing, and it would seem that it is, for some reason, a very biased reporting, because none of the record of the original, or I should say the original agreement, but the multiple agreements have been public record for a very long time. The fact of the matter is, we have had an alternate plan agreed upon with the developers and along with the city, even if the new market tax credits didn't become available, that there was already a revised plan to build this development. So this development has never been dependent on this newest agreement, because this newest agreement was sprung on the council even after a revised agreement in December that the council voted on unanimously, and I was one of those, because it shortened up the timeline to get this built, because we all want to see this built. The fact of the matter is, for some reason, this agreement keeps getting revised, or at least attempts to revise it, by certain parties. I don't know who the parties are, be it the developers, be it people on this council, but the fact of the matter is, we've had multiple agreements to get this done. The city has said yes, and we have invested large amounts of public money into this deal. I don't think anybody on this dais would disagree that we have supported this as recent as December. So now all of a sudden this was thrown in front of us, and the mayor and the finance office have asked for some financials, very, very agreeable type things, where they could define who they wanted to use to make an accounting of the financials for this deal. It's a very, I should say, minimal thing to do. I think, honestly, if I were the mayor, I may have asked for more. I don't, honestly, we're talking about millions and millions of dollars in tax increment financing and in vision funds, plus the land, as an investment from the taxpayers. And so I'm just very disturbed that this plan, or this agreement, and it's my definition here that an agreement is something that we've had on this for a very long time. And the fact of the matter is, the agreement means that the two parties have agreed that we're going to do this. That's what the agreement's all about. And for some reason, it keeps getting revised. The goalposts keep getting moved. And I don't know specifically who's moving them, but the fact of the matter is, the city has always supported this from the get-go. And I brought up the mayor's name, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, but the fact of the matter is, I would like to hear, Mayor, if you can, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I would like to know your opinion on what has occurred here, because I think it's egregious what has occurred in the media. And so if you can just please give me your opinion on this, I would greatly appreciate it. I can understand if you would say no at this point. But
I can do that. I've got just a few things I'd like to...
Is this the point of order?
Oh, this is fine. If somebody wants to call a point of order, they can, but this is acceptable.
Well, I guess I have a question.
Frequently answer questions throughout meetings. So.
Well, I guess I have a question as to point of order, and it's this: the last decision this council made, they voted 6-2 to send this to staff. Now, we haven't heard from staff. Why are we talking about this? I mean, the next thing that we should be doing is hearing what the staff had to report. And now it's back on the deal.
So if you could state your point of order, it's you'd like to hear
well,
from staff.
My point of order is that I guess that in my way of thinking, the next thing in order is to hear that staff report that this council voted 6-2 to send it to staff to see if they can make a workable deal, and we haven't heard that.
Well, I will rule in your favor on the request on the point of order to hear from staff, and if anyone disagrees with the point of order, it can be appealed to the rest of the council. If we have no appeals on that, we'll go to staff for a brief report. Do you want to, Pauline or Joel? You two are mainly involved over the last month. Either of you want to please give us a brief synopsis?
I really don't have a lot to add. We sat down, we met with the developer multiple times, and we're trying to work out an agreement where the $5 million, based on the council's determination that all the money should go into the ramp, and I had begun drafting the agreement. We had discussed at our meetings that perhaps a financial feasibility study for the whole ramp or for the whole project was needed, just to do our due diligence. The developers did express some concern with that, as evidenced in their letter. They asked for a written letter, which the finance officer, of what exactly the request was, the finance officer provided that. They responded to it on Monday. On Monday, when we received their response, I sent an email to Mr. Shaffey and confirmed that they were not interested in pursuing a new agreement. So at that point, I ceased work on the agreement.
Okay. Pauline?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To add on to that, in between the meetings, I contacted Doherty and Company and asked them to start working on looking at how much the city could potentially bond for their $3 million cash request for this part of the project. Last Monday, I sent the one gentleman an email asking on the status of that for the agenda review prior to Legal and Finance. The response back was that he had dropped the ball, but he would get right back on it. So he started working on it, and then when we received the letter from Hanny and Pat, I told them, well, there's no need. They're going to withdraw their negotiations, so the additional money is not needed. Received an email from Jerry on Thursday asking for that information, contacted them again, and we got that information on Friday when I immediately sent it out to Jerry and the parties that he had included on his email. So, and I can forward that email on to the rest of the council. Honestly, I didn't attach it. I sent it to Jerry, Richie, Amanda, the mayor, Terry, and Joel, and then Tracy in my office. I included her just so that she had that information in case I couldn't be at a meeting. But basically, that said that the absolute most that the city could borrow on an additional parking revenue bond was $2.3 million, and that is assuming 100% occupancy 100% of the time. It also requires a feasibility study for the projected parking revenues to make sure that we can meet the bond covenants. So we would have to provide a financial feasibility study for our portion of the project. Bottom line is that reiterates my need to know the financial viability of the project as a whole, because I don't need 500 spaces down there if this project doesn't happen, because that's not where the need is. I don't have a huge waiting list for that area of town. My waiting list is on the 700 and 800 block. So if the project as a whole is not successful, our parking ramp would not be successful, and we could not meet the bond covenants that we are required to meet. So just a little bit of history there, or a little bit of what I know based on information from the bond folks on Friday.
We'll go back to Steve Laurenti.
I have one last comment, Mayor, and unless, again, my question still stands for you, but
I will go ahead and
my last point.
Comment, and then I'll.
I guess my last point here is to hit home the fact that we have had multiple agreements with the developer, which, again, it's an agreement, so they agreed to the project. And the city has made a tremendous investment. The taxpayers have made a tremendous investment. So there's no doubt the city has held up its end of the agreement. We haven't changed it. We haven't changed any of what we have offered. So I'm still a little befuddled about how this hasn't moved forward, and we keep coming back with something new that we need to give to the developer. But we already had an agreement signed in December. So I'm still confused as to where we are, especially when we just learned in December, I believe, that the new market tax credits were not even applied for. And I think that surprised everybody on the council. At least it did myself and three, just from their reaction when it was said. And I would love to see this development happen, but I will not support using more of the taxpayers' money beyond what we have already committed. Thank you, Mayor.
Can you restate your question to me?
Well, my question was in light of what has been brought about in the media on this particular subject. This is within, obviously, what has already been brought up in some of the comment, and I just wanted to get your clarity on what occurred in the media and get your spin on that so that we can all understand where you stand on this project.
All right. Well, I will do that if that is okay with the rest of the council. Now is time as good as any to answer those questions. I wouldn't view it as spin. I view it as as the facts. I'm going to lay out a number of facts here that I think will help clarify the situation. I think the overriding question here is, how do we get this project done? And I've been involved in this longer than any of the rest of you on the council, and I have supported the project from the beginning. Let's do a quick review of the facts. This will take me several minutes, but I think this will help clarify the discussion as we move forward. And I think it's important for the council to and the community to hear the facts from my perspective, and then we're certainly free to debate it. Fact number one, I have supported this project from the beginning. Fact, my record in public service shows I believe in accountability and don't support blank checks. Fact, the agreements negotiated a few years ago and the updated agreement from a few months ago gives the developers a great deal of flexibility with the project, since it was known from the beginning the new market tax credits weren't a sure thing. Fact, new market tax credits for 2014 are reserved for highly distressed areas. Yes, our city indeed has some census tracts that meet these guidelines, but beyond that, it's a matter of degrees. And that puts us in competition with other parts of the country with high or higher unemployment rates and lacking a vibrant downtown. Fact. The City Council and I learned for the first time on February 3, 2014, that the developers hadn't applied for this round of new market tax credits. Fact. The developers had previously stated, and this is reflected in the flexibility of the negotiated agreements, that if they didn't get new market tax credits, they would be able to scale down and build the project. Fact. The developers have said or accused me of causing them not to get new market tax credits with my questions, and that is the equivalent of accusing me of causing someone to lose the Powerball jackpot because I failed to remind them to buy a ticket. Fact. The plans submitted by President's Plaza and approved by the City Planning Commission in May of 2012 show at least 493 parking spaces will be built by President's Plaza. Fact. 350 spaces is the amount the city would have owned per the original plan. The additional 150 spaces that the additional $5 million infusion of cash that is being sought now, or had been sought until last week, would buy were parking spots that would have been built anyway and were part of the portion of President's Plaza that they were going to build. And now they would still want to use those 150 spots, but would want to lease them from us instead of owning them. Fact. The Central Business District doesn't require businesses to provide parking. If President's Plaza was built outside the downtown core, the planning department's estimated parking requirement would be a minimum of 429 spaces and as high as 524, depending on the seating needed in the restaurant. That, by the way, is linked to the agenda tonight. Fact. This project involves an extensive taxpayer contribution, city land, vision funds, and a tax increment financing district. Fact, I have been accused of inflating the taxpayer costs by including the interest calculation on the TIF. However, when a citizen of this community buys a house from any mortgage lender, they receive a full disclosure of the projected interest as well. We owe that to our community. The maximum value of the TIF reimbursement is potentially $23,681,191.38. Fact. Cities in South Dakota are not allowed to give away land. It's illegal. We can trade it up or trade it over. We must have a higher or equal value in return. That requires appraisals. Fact. The 2009 Ken Simpson appraisal estimated the value of the ramp would be approximately $12 million. After subtracting out $1 million in land, which needs to be reappraised after the lapse of time, and the $2.8 million in vision funds, and the $5 million proposed infusion of cash, it means that the most the TIF would be legally allowed to be financed would be $3.2 million plus interest. However, the principal amount of the TIF in the link on tonight's agenda is $8,659,565, and that appears to be exclusive of interest. It appears to be principal. Fact. In addition to the denominator of the TIF number not making sense, the numerator is hard to understand as well. The submittal from President's Plaza Committee in two places that was linked to the February 3 agenda and is linked again tonight said the project would include 350,000 square feet of taxable property. Fact. When Michael Howard in my office, who's really a smart guy by the way, asked Pat Hall a question I hadn't thought of, and that is if the 350,000 square feet would include the non-tax parking or exclude it, Mr. Hall said the 350,000 square foot number would include the non-taxed parking. Fact. The estimated square footage of the 500 parking stalls is 200,000 square feet. That means the taxable square footage would be 150,000 square feet rather than 350,000 square feet. That, my friends, is more than a minor detail. Fact. We don't know anymore for sure how big the project will be or how big the TIF needs to be or how it would pay off. And our council president said in the paper yesterday, and he used the word guess, as far as how big the project would be, or I think how much money. Allow me to. Yes. Okay. He used the word guess in the newspaper to describe the scope of the project. Fact. President's Plaza and the city negotiated agreements that allowed and allows the project to be scaled down and built if they didn't get new market tax credits. And now it appears the project would be scaled down anyway, even if there is a $5 million infusion of cash into the project. We do know that the convention center would likely be coming out of the project. The last proof of financing is from January 2012 and has many qualifications and references to new market tax credits. We haven't seen a proof of financing since that time. Fact. I'm not the only member of this body who has been concerned about the viability of this project. Last fall, a couple of council members visited U.S. Bank, and a few weeks ago, Richie Nordstrom asked for a pro forma. Thank you, Richie. Clearly, these types of questions were not well received for some reason. I asked a minor question about the timeframes and criteria of this project to a federal agency, and it was not well received. Fact. On Friday, January 31, I asked Mr. Hall in a meeting, Mr. Wright and others were present, the President's Plaza Committee, how much private equity was being put into the project. He was very respectful about it, but he said it was none of my business. Fact. Our finance officer and our city attorney both believe, as do I, that we need assurances the project will be viable to protect our investment. Fact. President's Plaza has said they have private investors. Fact. In a project such as this, projected financials are almost always available to show prospective investors. This is not an intrusive request. We don't need Social Security numbers, tax returns, birth dates, etc. We need, I'm sticking to the facts, we need a business plan, which in a project like this is known as projected financials. Fact, and I'm winding down. There are 3 levels of projected financial analysis. There is a compilation, which is the lowest level, a review, and an audit. Precisely, it is called an independent accountant's compilation of projected financials, or you can substitute the word review and audit for the various levels. I had recommended an audit of the projected financials. Fact. Our finance officer and city attorney did not agree with me, and they are empowered to not agree. They didn't agree with me that an audit was necessary. They thought it was too much to ask and that it would take too much time and that it was unnecessary. They recommended asking for an independent accountant's compilation of projected financials, the lowest level. Fact, we didn't ask 6 days prior to the legal and finance meeting for assurance of the viability of the project. We've been seeking it in one way or another for months. Fact, even if it was 6 days, it shouldn't take 6 days for someone at President's Plaza to send the information over. Theoretically, we could have had it in 6 minutes. Fact, the finance officer offered to pay for the compilation, which would likely have cost $5,000 or so. fact, we are asking for less information than the average citizen of our community would have to provide if they were seeking a loan on a house, which is much less a cost of this project. One of the potential funding sources for the $3 million of the $5 million in cash infusion is our unencumbered cash. And that represents 7 to 10 years of property tax increases, also known as the CPI. 2 of the last 3 years, this is a fact, we've been able to avoid increasing the city's share of our citizens' property tax bills because of other increased revenues. And finally, again, how do we get this project done? And here's the answer. President's Plaza and the city have an agreement. They can proceed with the project now without further delay, without further request for money from the taxpayers, and without further controversy, and I hope they will do that. Mr. Laurenti, have I answered your question?
More so than I had anticipated, but it gave me a lot of facts that I was not aware of, and I appreciate that. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
I yield the floor.
Floor has been yielded. We'll go to Alderman Jerry Wright.
This is truly amazing because someone leaked what I was going to say tonight, apparently, to the mayor. Tragedy. A lesson to be learned. Sam Quaker is a brilliant man. He is very politically motivated, gets things done. I respect him in many ways. But let's deal with one fact, and that's the fact of tonight. On Monday, February 3rd, 2014, this council, in a vote of 6-2, directed that the agreements and statements set forth in the letters of January 15th, 2014 from the President's Limited Liability Corporation and of the January 24th, 2014 from the City Council Subcommittee for President's Plaza be incorporated as appropriate into an amended existing developers agreement, and that agreement be presented to the Legal Finance Committee on Wednesday, February 26, 2014, and the City Council on Monday, March 3rd, 2014. The mayor, in failing to do this through his staff, is in contempt of this council. He has misled this community and is trying to cover it by making his statements. Again, Mayor Sam Quaker has stonewalled and delayed this project for unknown reasons. I do not understand why he is against this $50 million project for renewal to downtown Rapid City. This project would have built a privately owned property worth approximately $35 million in taxable value and a city-owned 500-stall parking structure worth about $14 million. This project has been on the books since 1974 when the city removed the original buildings, built a surface parking lot with hopes of building a parking structure and the needed urban renewal for downtown. The 2005 council, which Mayor Quaker was a part of, allocated $2.8 million of vision funds to help parking structure, and the 2006 council received proposals to rebuild the site, including the parking structure. President's Plaza was selected to be the developer to build the parking structure using the $2.8 million funds, the land for the development, and a TIF to finance the remaining costs of the city-owned parking structure. Mayor Sam Quaker, for reasons I do not know and can only speculate, has jeopardized the completion of this long-sought project. I'm president of the council. There's 2 other members of that subcommittee. This is the most the mayor has said directly about this entire project in detail since December when I started working to see a resolution to getting this building done. Mayor Quaker has stated the project, as proposed to the council subcommittee and as stated by the developer, lacks the transparency and financial viability, that a step was skipped, and the use of $3 million from the general fund has him concerned. Let's talk about these statements, which I do consider inflammatory, misleading, and inaccurate. The letter of January 15, 2014 from the developers of President Plaza and the letter from the Council Subcommittee for President Plaza have been available to the mayor, council, staff, and community since their date of publication, and they have repeatedly been included as attachments to all applicable agenda items and press. That is pure transparency. The financial analysis that I conducted was included in these communications, and it too has been available in the same manner. The tragedy of this claim of transparency by the developer and the City Council is that it has been ignored by the mayor. I have yet to receive a single appropriate analysis or critique of my work on the financial analysis of the options. No step was ever skipped. I'm not even sure where that comes from, what it means. Other than after the new market tax credit, I call it interference, as was stated by the developer. I met with the developers, asked if something could be done to still get the project done. I was told yes, with an additional investment of $5 million and some downsizing of the project. The $5 million is $3 million from the taxpayers, and $2 million in a very kind and generous offer from Destination Rapid City to create new parking and economic development in downtown Rapid City. Remember, this has been a goal of the city since 1974, 40 years ago. We were technically within inches of getting this project done. I feel had these letters been sent to the council with an arrangement and an agreement amended as such. The use of the $3 million of city cash has been distorted beyond belief by Mayor Quaker. The city would have been investing an additional $3 million, true, but they would have been receiving a matching gift of $2 million to pay down the amount of the money the TIF would have originally financed. This is where the taxpayers are being cheated out of a good deal. With the cost of the parking structure, we could finance $5 million worth of construction with a 20-year note at 6%, raising the total cost of $8 million, or we could have used the $3 million, received the $2 million from Destination Rapid City, and the taxpayers would have received $5 million worth of construction for a $3 million investment, no interest. What's the best for the taxpayer? $5 million worth of construction for $3 million, or $5 million with $3 million in interest for a total of $8 million. The taxpayers were cheated by this mayor in his misleading statements and the delay of this project as it was set up. Fellow citizens, members of this council, tragedy has struck again tonight on getting this 40-year-old project done. Tragedy has struck against the wishes of the 2006 councils to see the use of the Vision funds and a TIF to achieve the needed parking and the renewal in downtown Rapid City. Tragedy has struck again in the failure of Mayor Quaker to abide with the direction of this council. All correspondence and analysis has been fully available for discussion in living transparency, but has not been discussed or analyzed by Mayor Quaker. Recent events, such as the March 6th letter from the mayor's finance officer requesting financial information, only 6 days before this action requested by the council, before the amended agreement was to go to the Council Legal and Finance Committee, is nothing short of obstruction, indifference, and lack of transparency. Further, I did not receive until Friday, March 14th, the disclosure from the Finance Office that $2.3 million of the $3 million could have been financed by our current parking lot and area fund bond. That is nothing short of obstruction, indifference, and lack of transparency. And I hold the mayor responsible for that, not his staff. So, folks, we could have saved ourselves $5 million in expenses. We could add the bonding capability. This is obstruction of the process and contempt of council. The letter of March 10th, 2014 from President Plaza states, in part, unfortunately, These discussions have drug out, and more new conditions continue to arise, of which current request is just one, leading President Plaza to the conclusion that no agreement will ever be reached. For that reason, President Plaza considers the current discussions terminated and will proceed under the terms of the current contracts. What are the losses? We lose a starting date of fall 2014 and a completion date of fall 2016. We lose the agreement of 500 parking stalls. We lose the opportunity to utilize $2 million from Destination Rapid City. The taxpayers will now pay $8 million, $5 million in construction, $3 million in interest. This is not good business, nor is it good government. This is not good for taxpayers. This has not been good for Rapid City, and in particular, the downtown business area. Mayor Quaker has stood against this viable option for reasons I cannot understand, comprehend, or see. It appears politics, not leadership, has prevailed in this issue, and all of us as a community have suffered a significant loss and a tremendous opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Wright. We'll now go to Alderwoman Amanda Scott.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to make a substitute motion to table this item.
Second.
We have a substitute motion to table and a second by Bonnie Peterson. There is no discussion on a tabling motion. All in favor of tabling this item, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries and this item is tabled. Thank you, everyone, for the discussion. We're now on item number 54. Bids on ambulance. Pauline?
There's a 53A on a posted agenda.
Yes,
No.
there was a 53A. It was added. It was missed. But I think it
Okay.
should still be on your.
Somebody could help me out with that one. I don't have that version, so.
Mayor, it's to deny request from Ryan Purdy for reimbursement for personal property abated at 1918 Fifth Street.
Is this printed on the agenda that the audience had tonight?
Yes, it was.
Oh, it was, okay. So item 53A is to deny a request from Ryan Purdy for reimbursement of personal property abated at 1918 Fifth Street.
So
Is
moved.
Ryan here tonight? Okay. We have a motion to deny
Yes.
by Nordstrom and a second by Laurenti. Any discussion on item 53A? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. This item is denied. We're now on item 54.
We received two bids on, I believe it's a new Type 3 ambulance. First bid was $104,900 from Aero Manufacturing. Second bid was $160,335 from Allegiant Emergency Services. The recommendation is actually to award to Allegiant Emergency Services because the low bidder did not meet specifications.
Motion by Peterson, second by Nordstrom. Everyone understands the motion? Amanda Scott.
Thank you, Mayor. May I direct a question to our city attorney, please?
You may.
Thank you. Joel, only because there was another bid that was the low bid, and it was stated earlier that the city council has no option whatsoever except to accept the low bid. Would you please clarify, since
All right.
this one is not taking the low bid?
That statement assumed that all the bidders were responsible and that all bids met specifications. Obviously, as we have previously gone through a discussion, if a bidder is deemed to be non-responsible or the bid is non-responsive, i.e. it does not meet the specifications of the contract, those would be two grounds on which you could deny it. But assuming the responsibility and responsiveness, you are required to award to the lowest bidder.
Thank you. I yield the floor.
Everyone understands the motion. All in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We are now on consent public hearing items 55 through 59. The public hearing is open. We do not have any speaker request forms. Have I missed anyone for items 55 through 59? Seeing none, public hearing is now closed. Or anyone like to consider any of these items separately? If not, can we have a motion to approve all of these?
Second.
Motion by Laurenti, second by Clayton to approve 55 through 59. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed, motion carries. We're now on item 60. Chad, can you read item 60 into the record for us?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item number 60 is, Resolution 2014-035, a resolution authorizing the application for financial assistance, authorizing the execution and submittal of the application, and designating an authorized representative, and I move approval.
And this is for the East Rapid City Water System Expansion Project, project number 13-2107, CIP Project 5964.
Exactly.
Okay.
I'll
Do we have a second?
I'll second
We have
for
a
the
second by
presentation.
Scott, and we will go to our Public Works Director, Terry Waltersdorf.
Thank you, Mayor. As you open the public hearing here, I just wanted to give you a brief history, and then I'm going to turn it over to Ted Schultz with CTEC and Denise Livingston with the Rural Community Assistance Corporation to give you a brief presentation and discuss some letters of support that were also linked to the agenda item. If you recall, for about the last 2+ years, we've been working on an expansion of our water system out to the airport. And in May 7 of 2012, the City Council approved the option for us to supply water outside of city limits in a service district that we called the East Rapid Service District. That resolution and the attached documents were also attached to the summary sheet on your agenda tonight. We have an opportunity to apply for some SRF loan funding from the DENR, South Dakota DENR. And as part of that, there is hopefully some substantial debt forgiveness that will bring the cost of the expansion, which would supply water to some very needing developments out there that currently get what I would call non-compliant water from their water sources. Anyway, it would allow us to bring the water out there in a economic fashion to them. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ted Schultz, and he'll give you a brief presentation.
Can I get this? Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'd like to talk to you tonight about the Rapid City, East Rapid City Water System Expansion Project. If we can get it up on the monitor. Not sure if it's...
We get somebody to help us out here. And
Sorry about that, but what we have is basically a public hearing tonight to talk about expansion of the water service district out near the airport between Southside Drive, Longview Drive, Radar Hill Road, and Reservoir Road, an area east of the city limits. We currently have some residential areas out there that are non-compliant water. Water's out of specification. As Valley View Estates has about 107 homes. Mesa View Estates has 40 homes. Terracotta Estates has 32 homes. And these homes out there are on their own central public water system and non-compliant systems. There are also some, about 100 other homes that are on no public water systems and either haul water or have their own wells. The Rapid City Water Reclamation Plant also does not have water in that area. We will be, with this project, bringing water out to the reclamation facility. This vicinity map shows the yellow areas in the east is the airport, the yellow areas on the west is the city limits. And in between is our potential water service area, and we've got these residential areas surrounding this vicinity. So you see the hatched area has the water system area that we're looking at. These are the homes that we were talking about here a minute ago. You know, the alternatives we looked at were no action, meaning we would not go out and expand this water system into this area. That would mean really no water to the airport, no water to the water rec facility, and no water to these residential areas, and would pass up expansion opportunities in the East Rapid City area. The other source would be Rapid Creek water from the treatment. Basically, it would require a treatment plant. Another option was the Rapid Valley Sanitary District has a water system in the east side of Rapid City. That was also explored. City of Box Elder has a water system to the north, and drilling central well supplies in that area was also reviewed. So with that, these alternatives were all reviewed and costs were estimated, and the option that was selected was a connection to the City of Rapid City water system due to costs, due to source availability, due to the water that's already treated and ready for distribution to this area. The area in the solid red lines are the proposed pipelines that we would build on this project. The dashed red lines are the areas that we would build in the future without this project. And so we are building about 7 miles of water lines with this project. There are about 273 homes in this area, and this water main arrangement would serve about 245 of those homes. With that, we summarize the costs. 16 to 8-inch pipe sizes in this area, about $7 million in cost for this project. At this time, I'm going to turn it back over to Denise Livingston, and she's going to talk about the financing side.
Thank you, Mayor Quaker and Council. My name is Denise Livingston. I'm a rural development specialist that has been working with these communities for several years now. We have really been struggling to find a viable option for these community members that are just in desperate need out here. As Ted has mentioned, this is a $7.1 million project. $1.5 million of this project is dedicated to the Water Reclamation Department. The remaining $5.6 million of this project we propose to go after state revolving fund. The loan terms for an SRF are 3% interest for over 20 years. Down below, Terry has already mentioned that the state is really willing to see this project, really wants to see this project through, and so they're willing to try to help out as best as they can with principal forgiveness funds. Principal forgiveness funds are a fancy term for grant dollars, and how that works is if you go after $100,000 for a loan, they'll say, okay, $100,000 and 20% principal forgiveness, and ultimately at the end, when you pay that back, you only pay back $80,000. So right now, and like all grant opportunities, they are limited, they're in high demand, and we are getting geared up to go into the second funding round for SRF money. And what that means is that we have to have an application into the state by April 1st. And the state has indicated that if we do not get an application in by April 1st, the next funding round, the third funding round, will be July 1, and chances for principal forgiveness, especially this amount of principal forgiveness, is going to be basically null and void. So we really want to see an application in place. And I also just want to address that just because we put an application in by April 1, that does not commit the city to accepting the Board of Water and Natural Resources recommendation when they do come back with a funding scenario for us, which would be not until late June. So if they came back and said, yes, we'll give you a loan for $5.6 million with 20% principal forgiveness, if at that time the city just doesn't think that's a viable option, you are not committed to that, that agreement. the state really wants to see this project happen because, truth be told, Rapid City is a viable option. You have the technical, the managerial, and the financial capabilities of operating a water system. These small systems that are out in this area, for one reason or another, do not have the TMF capabilities to manage their system. Valley View has been out of EPA compliance since 2002. Mesa View has very mediocre infrastructure and has water that's influenced by the surface water, or also known as an irrigation ditch. Longview residents don't have a water system, and also Terracotta is also struggling with technical, managerial, and financial capabilities as well. The proposal for this project is that the city will pledge water revenues for the loan repayment. However, the city will regain capital costs for their investments by using what we're calling a supplemental monthly charge for all the customers in this area. Depending on what the principal forgiveness comes in at, we're looking at approximately $50 to $80 a month for that supplemental charge. And this is pretty excessive for this area. This is a low to moderate income area. But these community members, they need safe, clean drinking water, and they want safe, clean drinking water, and they want to tie into Rapid City Water. I do have a couple of letters of support from these community members stating, their desire to tie into Rapid City Water. And I would like to just read one of them. They are attached to the agenda tonight, but I just want to read one of them just to kind of give you an idea. They're all fairly similar. The one from Valley View Estate Homeowners Association, these are the homeowners that are tied into Rainbow Water. It's a privately owned water system. This is the one that's been out of EPA compliance since 2002. Out of EPA compliance for safe drinking water since 2004. And they write, Dear Mr. Titus, Valley View Estates has close to 100 homes with median household incomes. We have been serviced by a privately owned water system that has failed to meet EPA safe drinking water standards since 2004. Therefore, on behalf of Valley View Estate Homeowners Association, we would like to express our wholehearted support for the proposed East Rapid City Water expansion project that will provide quality water to our subdivision. The cost estimates for this project suggest that homeowners could face a surcharge of $65 per month. This is extreme for median household incomes, but compared to the cost we now face for filters, appliance replacements, clothing replacements, and decreased property values, we still support the project. We would, however, ask that the council seriously consider helping us by waiving the 150% water rates and not allowing the surcharge to exceed the $65 mark. This project is critical to our homeowners. Clearly, our options for a source of safe drinking water are limited. We need your assistance and appreciate your consideration with our predicament. Sincerely, Leslie Alcoss, Homeowners Association President. Terracotta homeowners also signed a similar letter. Terracotta actually also had a petition signed by all of their homeowners in support of the letter of support, so you know that they're very dedicated to this project. It's also important to know that this project is, the existing water rates for the city will remain unchanged due to this project. It's the users in this region that will be paying the loan back ultimately through the supplemental charge. And as I had mentioned, since this is a low to moderate income and the community members are going to be subjected to this supplemental charge, we would like the city to consider revising its current policy that for non-city users, to pay 150% if you would waive that for 100%. And I think that is all that we have, and I would love to answer any questions the council may have.
I believe the next step here is to close the public hearing. Are there any other public comments that I've missed? Seeing none, public hearing is now closed. We do have a motion, and technically I needed to close the public hearing before the motion was offered and second. So who is our motion maker and our seconder?
Lewis and Scott.
I'm sorry? Lewis and Scott? Will we reiterate the motion? Yep. And you're still good with the second? I just want to make sure we get the procedure proper here. So we have a motion and a second for approval. And we'll now go to John Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Terry, can I ask you a couple questions, please? I just want to get a little bit of your take on this. I know what mine is, but I'm just curious about yours. And then another thing is funding source. Do we have $1.5 million not accounted for to get this going?
First of all our money is always accounted for. I'll let you know that.
Good answer.
Obligated.
Terry, good answer.
It's late. I've been up since 5 this morning.
We usually have all of it obligated. Here's the deal. We had the money allocated to bring the water system out to the airport. That money had already been approved by the city council. What we have an opportunity to do here, though, is to leverage some additional funding from the DENR. So we really are not anticipating bringing additional money to the table from our end, but we are asking the state to bring some money from their end to bring to help us expand our system out there. I look at it as an opportunity to put the backbone of our system in out there for future development out in this area. I look as an alternative. If we don't do this, what you're going to see is additional water, rural water systems out there, whether it be Longview Sanitary District or expansion of Rapid Valley Sanitary District. You could see a handful of sanitary districts out there, and I think just for the future expansion of the city of Rapid City, it makes sense for us to own and operate the water system out there. So the money's been allocated, in my opinion, both there was money that was allocated from the leftover bond money for Jackson Springs. There was also money that was allocated out of the utility support fund, and there's money that has been allocated out of the water reclamation facility fund, because part of it is the expansion of the system down to our water reclamation facility plant for fire protection services. So I think hopefully that answered your questions.
That did. I have one more for you, though, if you don't mind. How many people do we have outside of the limits, or rough number, that are paying 150% of the rate right now? Do you know?
It's a fairly small number. I would guess less than a dozen if I remember right. So there's not very many at this point.
Okay. Thank you very much, Terry.
We'll now go to Amanda Scott. Amanda?
Thank you, Mayor. May I ask Mr. Wolsterstorff a couple questions as well? Thank you. Terry, what's, in relationship to the expansion of this system, what's the potential time frame for annexation so that they wouldn't be subject to the 150% charges?
Well, a lot of it's going to be dependent on development and connection of the properties in between these customers and the current city limits. So it's hard to say what the time frame could be. It could happen rather quickly, or it could take a while. A lot of times it's, build it and they will come. That happens quite often out there. So, look, if they were contiguous to the city limits, we would be coming to them and saying, annex before you receive the service. It's been a topic of discussion here recently, but right now these homes are not contiguous, and it's kind of dependent on the properties in between.
And currently, during the presentation, there was letters offered from associations out there. And there was signatures of support for many of the residents in some of the associations. However, if we build it and they should come, doesn't mean that they have to come. Is that correct?
That would be correct, although I would say this. Unless we had formal agreements with these homeowners associations, I would be hard-pressed to recommend that we build the project, because if we don't have the revenue source from them, we don't have the revenue source to pay the state back for the loan. So they kind of go hand in hand. I would expect what will happen is once we apply for the money, we will start the negotiation process with the homeowners association. And if the funding comes through from the state at the levels that we think is economically viable, my hope is that we would have the agreements in hand at the same time that these homeowners associations will tie into our system. That would give us the, I guess, reliability that we could actually go out and begin the construction of the project.
And according to the letters from one of the associations, at least, they kind of capped the request at $65. Is there room with the negotiations that you're talking about to cap that in reference to as that surcharge would be applied as long as the loan is outstanding until the money is recovered?
A couple things are going to affect that dollar amount. One is how much debt forgiveness or grant the DENR is willing to come to the table with, and the second one is how many accounts we actually get signed up. If we only get 200 people to sign up with our service right off the get-go, it's going to drive that cost up a little bit. Likewise, if we only see 40 or 50% reduction, that also will impact it. So there's a couple things at play here.
All right. And then just my final question for clarification. By the City Council approving this tonight, it's basically just giving permission to go ahead and try for the grant money and the debt forgiveness. This will come back to Council.
That is correct.
Thank you. I yield the floor.
Richie Nordstrom.
Thank you, Mayor. And I think with that last comment, that'll alter my line of question here. But Terry, on the 150%, have you got are you in negotiations over that now, or is that comes next, or it's a question for Mr. Walterstorff, if I may, Mayor?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. That topic is really not a topic of discussion tonight. That will come back to you at a later time. We've been talking about it internally on the staff level. We believe that there's probably some changes that are warranted to that current resolution that sets the policy for services outside of city limits. That's a discussion for another day, though.
Thank you. Because I agree with you, we've got that same conversation going with other properties outside the city limits. So I'll be interested in seeing what your recommendation is. Thank you.
Bonnie Peterson.
Thank you, Mayor. I always want to reach out for our neighbors if they don't have they have bad water. That's a horrible situation. And since I won't ask my other questions about annexation, because I know the first year I was on council, we had public meetings out in different areas because we were trying to get some communities to agree to annexation. And so when this comes back again, I'd like to know what that group was compared to this group. If it's like we were trying to annex the people that have good water. Okay. Or whatever. So I'll have more questions later when it comes back, but hopefully we can do something to help our neighbors, and it seems like it's a win-win for us. So thanks.
Brad Estes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Terry, I also have a question for Terry. Yeah. So if I understand this project, this helps us with, as you call it, the backbone of the system, but helps in our looping at the airport also in kind of some redundancy there?
Yes, it does.
Thank you. And then my final question is, do you suppose we could put the line in the railroad right-of-way so we could finish the bike trail all the way to the airport? Just thought I'd
great question, and yeah.
All right, thanks.
Do you want me
Any
to
further?
Answer that?
Go ahead. The question.
No.
Yeah, no. Any further discussion on item 60? The motion is for approval. Everyone understands the motion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We have item 61 bill list, and we can't forget about item 29. So we'll do item 61.
Bill list is that which is before you at $5,802,719.39.
Motion by Laurenti, second by Peterson to approve. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We are back to item number 29, which was regarding the matching matching funding for the South Dakota DOT Transportation Alternatives Program project, including a connection to Western Dakota Tech. We'll recognize our Parks and Recreation Director, Jeff Beagler.
Thank you very much, and thank you for allowing us to go at the end of this agenda. We were able to get some additional information. I just wanted to let you all know that Parks and Recreation and I think the city, I think it's been noted up there on the dais that there's a lot of support for parks and trails, and we certainly appreciate that, and I think the community does as well. We were also asked to demonstrate our commitment, Parks and Recreation's commitment to this project, in addition to the letter which accompanied the application process in which we committed ongoing maintenance of this trail as well as any additional legs of this trail, only out as far as the city limits, not out to Kadoka. But we've looked at our parks CIP budget, and the amount of money in our contingency line item that the finance officer pointed out is money that has been identified and will be obligated to the Dinosaur Park Skyline Drive Improvements Project in order to get ADA access all the way up to the top of to the top of Dinosaur Park, and to make some long overdue improvements to that facility. However, we will be able to reprioritize some smaller projects in our CIP in order to come up with some of the match here. I did speak with Ms. Sumption, our finance officer. There is an amount in the CIP grant match for this year of $206,000. And although our request, if it were to be approved by council, of up to $200,000 would leave that almost depleted, it is renewed then in 2015. And at the moment, there are no other requests for matching grant funds from any other department. Our proposal, therefore, would be to recommend approval of up to $200,000 from the CIP grant match line item, as well as the $99,818 in-kind design service, and up to $100,000 from the Parks and Recreation CIP.
Okay. Yes. A motion by Nordstrom and a second by Laurenti. Charlene, did you get that motion down?
$200,000 from the CIP grant line item, $100,000 from the Park and Rec CIP. Is that contingency or just from Park and Rec CIP?
Contingency.
Contingency, and then the in-kind funding.
Okay. All right. Wait. Let's go to Richie. You still have the floor. Do you need the floor?
Thank you, Mayor. I guess I'm getting a little more comfortable with this, but trying to do negotiations at 11th hour or 12th hour in this case, it's I have a little discomfort level. But if you folks, and I've sat in on some of your meetings that you've had on the line items with the CIP that you're working on, and then especially with Dinosaur Park. And your concerns that you have up there need to be addressed. They really do need to be addressed. So if you're comfortable with what we're coming up with here, and we can actually pull it off, and I can support it. And in addition, Mayor, when we do the budgeting for next year, we need to take a real strong look at what we're doing with our Parks Department and how that's being worked over. Because a very serious concern has been brought up, as mentioned in Mr. Beagler's presentation here, is that not only can we get the trail built over there, but the ongoing maintenance after that's projects underlined. And then this is not the only other project they're going to be doing as addition to the ongoing maintenance on it. These folks are going to be tasked with other maintenance projects around the city, and haven't gotten online yet. So we need to take a serious look at when we get into the budgeting process for the Parks Department. So I just lay out those cautions, and we just need to address it in a good manner. Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate your input.
Thank you, Richie. We'll go to John Roberts. John.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Pauline, I've got a couple of questions for you, if you wouldn't mind. One, how comfortable are you with taking all of our budget from this line item at one time this early in the year? And then the second part of that question is, are you anticipating any more grants for the rest of the year? Because I know this is probably a little early for all the grants.
I can appreciate the question because I asked at CIP the last meeting if anybody knows of any other grant applications that were going to be coming forward, and nobody knew of anything at that time. I would be lying if I said I wasn't a little nervous about taking essentially all of the grant matching money. This is a new line item that was created in 2013, and so it's one of those that last year only $150,000 was used. I wasn't going to carry over the other $50,000, so that just reverts down to the cash. So there's still cash on hand if another grant comes in, and there's also contingency in CIP if another grant request comes in for matching money.
So it sounds like you're somewhat comfortable taking all the money out of, you just kind of on the fence there, or?
Honestly, Friday I sat down with Tracy in my office and we went over the carry forwards and what our cash balances are and that type of thing. And with that, which is coming forward on Friday, it makes me more comfortable, yes.
Thank you very much, Pauline. That makes a big difference for me. I do have a little heartburn over this, though, just the way that it's been done. And I know that you're under extreme time constraints, but I do not like making deals and proposals like this from the dais. I think all the information needs to come forward. This is a great project. I think it should be done. I hate the fact that we're taking such a low amount on the grant. I wish that the 80-20 sure looked a lot better. But there's a little leeway, I think, on this one for me, even though if you do it again, there won't be. So thank you very much.
Amanda Scott.
Thank you, Mayor. I am really uncomfortable with you not coming up with the money from the Parks and Rec. So, because Pauline, Mayor, may I ask Pauline Sumption a question? Thank you. Pauline, since this project is slated to really not go under works until 2015, if we allocate tonight and approve all of the CIP contingency money for 2014, is there any way to move that around and supplement it with the 2015 CIP contingency money?
For clarification, first
grant.
of all,
Yeah,
it's
the grant,
not contingency. And I know they had asked for grant money over a 2-year period. You could do it where it's $100,000 this year and $100,000 next year, and have it over a 2-year period instead of it all coming out of 2014's money, unless I'm misunderstanding what you said earlier tonight.
Okay, and thank you for that clarification. However, even with that clarification and the lateness of the hour and the potential that I do believe there will be other grants available that may give us better odds than what we're currently seeing, I think the project is viable. I am in full support of the project, but I cannot support this funding source, as mentioned, that's currently on the table. Thank you.
We'll now go to Charity Doyle. Charity.
Thank you, Mayor. And I guess I'll echo some of that. Again, I was probably one of the first champions for this project, and I don't like the way it's being thrown up here and rushed. I think a lot of this homework probably could have been done on the front end, and I appreciate you taking the time and that we gave you to come up. And, I have no idea how the vote's going to go, but I personally think it's bad business to do this, especially when it's tired. We've had a lot of issues tonight, and I guarantee if we pass this tonight, there's going to be something within the next week that we're going to go, oh, crap. We didn't realize that. We forgot it. It was late, whatever it was. And so I want you to understand. I support the project. I don't support the process right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Charity. We'll go to Jerry Wright. Jerry.
I again like the pickup, but I just can't buy it. I'm uncomfortable about the 11th hour financing, or actually 10th hour and 18th minute financing. I'm not very comfortable at all with just making a decision this time of night without knowing other issues out there floating. Thank you.
Bonnie Peterson.
Thank you, Mayor. I have questions for Mr. Beegler, please. Jeff, you came back with the alternative of taking it out of the CIP or the whole thing out of there. So is that your way of saying that the CIP can't, your Parks and Rec CIP can't absorb it over 2 years?
That is correct, without eliminating other projects that have already been
waiting
agreed upon. Yes, waiting for a while in some cases.
Okay. I can still support this. And also for my colleagues, I just want to remind y'all that when I first came on the council in 2010 with Mayor Hanks, that you were lucky to get out before midnight. So actually, we're just like starting. So I don't want to hear the comments about being late. We could still go another couple hours. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to. And that's a fact. I know there's a lot of support for this. I want it to work. I know I would suggest that the council tonight says that we're going to fund it and let CIP on Friday figure out the best way to fund it. Out of which, except that definitely Parks and Rec will be giving some skin in the game from this, like they said, the question of whether it comes somewhere else or whatever. So I will support it, but I agree it's not the best way to do business, but sometimes we have to.
Steve Laurenti.
Thank you, Mayor. And I just wanted to voice to my colleagues who are hesitant tonight that maybe we should resolve, and I'm definitely willing to resolve tonight if we need to. Let's put a resolution on right after this, add something to the agenda. Let's resolve to spread this out after we give them this yes tonight, and have it budgeted for 2015 separately out of CIP, so that we're not taking it all from the 2014. I mean, we can give them this yes tonight based on the funding that we're going to approve, but that doesn't mean we can't amend it so that it's more agreeable to all of us. So I'm willing to resolve to that tonight. Thank you, and I'm hoping that you'll support it, and I'm willing to work with everybody on the council to make sure that we get it right, because I agree it was kind of last hour, and this is not the way I like to do business either, but I think we can resolve to make some adjustments to it after we give them a yes tonight. Thank you.
Brad Estes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I appreciate everybody's comments and respect everybody's position. I guess I'm convinced by our finance officer that, she said she was at the meetings and she's asked, and there aren't any other requests in line, and I respect the everybody's position that they don't like to make decisions like this at the nth hour, but this is what's presented to us. He said we have to make a decision, and I think it's wise for us to take the money and try to see the project through. And it is unfortunate that it's late in the night and we're kind of rushed, but we all have to make decisions with the information that we have presented in front of us, and I hope you all or most of you are willing to support this. We can see this project. Thanks.
John Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Jeff, can I just kind of pick your brain a little bit for 1 second? You said in CIP and then tonight that this project could possibly be phased into 2 years. So if we could phase it into 2 years, all we have to do is give you the allocation of the funds. $100,000 would come out this year out of CIP, and 100,000 would come out next year out of CIP. And I think we can take care of that at CIP. All we have to do is give them the okay to fund it and go forward, and let's get this done. I mean, this is one of them that I think actually has to get, or should get done. It's a good project. So thank you very much.
Before we proceed to the vote, I just want to mention, I'll come to you in just a minute. I just want to mention it looks like we're going to have a close vote here. I support the motion on the floor, but if it comes to a tie, it dies because I'm not allowed to break a motion or on spending money. The mayor cannot break a tie on an ordinance, cannot break a tie on spending money. I do support the motion on the floor, but if it's a 5-5, it dies. So just so you guys know, we'll go to Chad Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make a substitute motion to do exactly what John Roberts was talking about, taking $100,000 this year and $100,000 next year. If that, if I can get a sec, I don't know if I can get a second or not. A 93 from Parks and Rec, excuse me, as well. So.
Okay, we have a motion by Lewis and a second by who? By Laurenti. You still have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just think if that works out okay for you, Jeff. Does that work okay for you, Pauline? Okay, that leaves us with $100,000 left in contingency for this year. Is that correct? 106. So that would give us for grant matching, but that would give us some operating ability for this year, and not completely hamstring us in case something does come along. The next year we can budget for it better. So I appreciate everybody's support on this, and I think it's very vital to keep this going. Thank you.
Jerry Wright.
Can you commit a budget that doesn't exist? The 2015 budget does not exist.
Pauline, go to our finance officer, Pauline Sumption.
Technically, we commit future budgets all the time when we do loans or leases or bonds. And so this, in that regard, is no different. And we're actually just allocating the money at this time. It will go through the budget process when it will hopefully be approved, where that money gets allocated out to them.
Okay.
So this would be included in the 2015.
So I don't have a
budget.
pickup payment until next year.
Amanda Scott.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to make a substitute motion.
State your motion, please.
My substitute motion is to actually commit Park and Rec CIP funds from 2015 in the amount of the $200,000 and then leave the grant at 106, 107 that's already been approved by CIP, and the 93,000 in kind, if I can get a second. I could support that.
Is there a second for the second substitute motion? Is there a second?
I'm just shifting yes, my substitute motion is to shift the funding source of the 200,000 or 193 or whatever, the 200,000 to the CIP Parks and Rec funding source, not the grant funding source. No, in 2015. That's when the project should let. So the funds would be available because they'll have the 106, 107 that's already been approved by CIP grant matching, and then this would be funded out of the 2015 Parks CIP money.
Is there a second? Is there a second? Motion dies for lack of a second. We're now going to proceed. Can we proceed to the vote? Yes. Okay. Everyone understands the motion. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Here. Roll call, please.
Estes. Aye. Peterson. Aye. Lewis. Aye. Doyle. Wright. No. Scott. No. Nordstrom. Aye. Roberts. Aye. Clayton. Aye. Laurenti. Aye. Motion carries 7-3.
We have a motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
We have a motion by Scott and a second by John Roberts. All in favor of adjournment, please say aye. Opposed, motion carries. We're adjourned. Have a good evening, everyone. Thank you.